Welcome back to Season 6, Episode 60. First episode in the brand new season. This episode is great, and we get into a lot of topics. Can't wait to dive in.
Electric Geology Kentucky, and EPEMC, a group of ours with Ramon, Extended Plasma Electromagnetic Cosmology. You can find us on Rumble, also on the podcast called The Pulse.
Episode 46 is the episode of this.
I'm Buddy James, your host.
Let's get into it.
Let's get into the circuit. We greatly appreciate your support. The best way to donate to us is on PayPal. Just send money directly to goldenscaling@gmail.com. Thank you very much. A conversation with me, Nick, Andy, and Ramon.
Right, so can you guys see the screen or no?
Yep.
Okay, very good. So this is the hotspots of the world. This doesn't have the overlay that has all the plates, but more or less they're usually in kind of the center-ish of plates. They're not usually along the boundary of the plate. But
Can you enlarge it though?
There are some that have moved over, and you can see that as the plates move, and then they're starting to bump up. Now, DeCinty's theory is two people. First is Professor Mayl, Meyl. His theory is that the Earth is receiving neutrinos, especially during supernova events. And these neutrinos get trapped in the core of the Earth and cause an expansion, and that expansion causes explosion. DeCinty's theory is that an ether current is, coming in from, say, the sun or wherever, and penetrating the crust at these locations. And then what can happen is the crust can buckle upwards as it gets lifted, and then the hotspot moves along, and then the crust collapses and sinks down. And that causes these crustal collapse situations like Atlantis potentially. You'll notice that there are hotspots all around the area that we think of potentially as Atlantis, near the Azores, etc. Then you have one that came from the area where the Carolina Bays are at and has moved out into the middle of the Bermuda. So they're all over the place. I definitely think that there's a likelihood of some kind of telluric current, something coming out of the core and bursting up. Now the question is, where are they going? Maybe they're connecting to each other. Maybe they're connecting to the sun. Maybe some of them still connect to Jupiter. It's going to be difficult to know for sure. But I think if we're going to look for current, not ancient, like ley lines, like the Appalachian and particular ones like the Sheltowee ley line. If we're going to look for current activity of telluric, I think that we start with the hotspots and kind of trying to determine where they're going. I do think that there were a time when there were short-term connections. I personally highly suspect that the Devil's Tower was an anode and the Black Hills were the cathode. And I think that there's going to be something like that in China where Wudong Mountain is the cathode. And so we have to find where the anode is. Maybe the anode is that platform Table Mountain that they have. Either way, whatever causes it to be upthrust. But now currently, looking at what the current electrical currents are. But then again, I'm not completely against this being the result of churning and weakness in these so-called magma plumes. My only problem is, how are you going to maintain the magma plume over millions of years, thousands of millions of years, if there's no downward flow, right? So how is it constantly? Because we know for sure as the magma comes up, it cools. So if it's only coming up, then what's happening to, how is it continuously coming up? So in this other paper that I did, the plasma electromagnetic sky, I went over, these are the plate directions and how they've been changing. Where did I put it here? Talking about pressure against here. So, I get into this is from Sapphire phase 1. But here I was describing, I was using it to describe some of the behaviors that we might be seeing where the solar wind comes in, and then we have the electric current coming into the north and south pole, and so I call this the electrothermal vine. And that if the Earth is like a tomato on the vine, then it's going to expand and ripen, but then at the end of a tomato's life, it starts getting the cracks. So I think it's totally natural with the current expansion behaviors that the Earth has so many of these cracks, these widespreading. Let's see, where was it? Well, here you can see. Look at how high the velocity is away from the Pacific Eastern Plate edge, and the expansion is extremely rapid and moving fast, and of course it's creating a subduction on the other side, but the amount that it's expanding is faster than the rate of subduction. And that's
Can I have a little, Ramon?
Yeah, go ahead.
Now what I was going to say was, so I was listening to on the dissident science fella, Dr. James Maxlow, and his idea of expansion tectonics, and that seems to go into a lot of what you're talking now.
Right.
I don't know whether you've heard any of those or not. There's 3 or 4 parts to it, and he's talking about where Earth is slowly expanding, and what you get for your expansion is from your solar winds. So those solar winds, those radiate those waves, and that gradually inside the core they mutate into different elementary structures. Right. Comes up, bubbles up. And he was also, I've only listened to the first one at the moment, and he was also under that most of the activity is under the ocean floor, and that's where you find a lot of your newer, as it's coming, as Earth's expanding, like it's the expansion of something like 25 mil or something a year. Right. It's not a real lot, and that could be a lot of what lead to what you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, these currents, first of all, look at how much is stored in these ropes just outside the Earth's magnetosphere. And yep. So if any of these penetrate at any time, suddenly twist in and then connect into one of the poles, the growth rate is going to boom. It's going to accelerate in a very quick manner. Mm-hmm. And currently the Earth, she has her own circuit, and so she's constantly pushing against. But there are times that these will connect, guarantee you. And then when that happens, the tomato will grow again, and when it grows, it's going to split. And it's a double vine because it's the north and south pole. But there's a constant regulation of in and out. But I reckon it's probably only 0.1% of what is possible at current. Because if it weren't, then the sun would overwhelm the Earth. I think we would rupture, like literally split. I think we would burst if the Earth was not capable of keeping that around. Now people will attack that and say that Mars isn't having that problem. It's like, well, there's a difference though. We don't know for sure that Mars has a living internal mechanism like the Earth does. It's clear the Earth has a living internal mechanism. I guess what we really need to do is measure Io, because Io is where it's the only place that we see the same kind of setup as Earth, relatively. If you could combine Europa into Io, if they could just crash them together, you'd have the makings of a good future planet.
One day. A big pile of dust. Another asteroid belt, possibly.
Well, yeah. I mean, obviously, you'd have to do it in a way that slowly melted off the water down on. You couldn't just ram them into each other. They'd have to spiral into each other. But there's much more water in Europa than on Earth, and it's like 4 times as much, and 4 or 5 times. And Io has all that electrical connection. Enceladus would also be a good opportunity because it's highly electrical and full of water. So, at any rate, yeah, I think Alphen had the basic gist of it correct, and Ralph Jurgens, and then later on Donald Scott.
This is great. This is great, Ramon. Because you're always talking about your papers and a lot of other stuff. To be able to just show it, like this, like you're doing, you could go through your other papers instead of just being like, oh, well, I wrote this, blah, blah, blah. You could actually pull the papers up, show the audience. That way they can see where it's at.
I could do it. I try not to brag. It's like...
No, I mean, you should. The more that people... When you talk about it, it's hard to follow you because you're like, oh, that's in a pen paper, that's in this paper, that's this. And, it's like... But if you actually pull up images and a little bit of words, that helps tremendously with the viewers.
Illustrating your words,
I'll start doing it more. I don't want to make it seem like I just want to overwhelm the other talkers with the things that have been pulled together. But the whole reason for pulling these things together and putting the citations is so that people can go and look for themselves and they can decide. Like this one's the plasma electromagnetic sky paper. And then the one with the hot spots was the first Atlantis paper. And Randall Carlson and I agree that probably the Azores is the best option for, and it's just so deep. It's so deep underwater. Nobody's been able to afford to go there except for maybe, that director Cameron, James Cameron. So, if he would spend the money, we could probably go down there and find Atlantis. And I don't think it would be even that hard. Once they start using 3D bathymetry, they'll start seeing the structures. Maybe the U.S. military already has. We know the U.S. military has hidden Arthurian secrets on above land. That's all confirmed now. So what would they be willing to hide underwater? Probably a lot. Probably a lot.
Wherever there's something to hide, if there's a crevice, it will be filled with hidden things.
Yeah, the U.S. Definitely the U.S. empire is interested in doing that. The point of this paper, a lot aside from the Hygieine theory in general, is to talk about the spheres of heaven and the spheres of earth, and this very interesting facet, which is that the core of the earth upwards moves from possibly plasma, but definitely some form of fluid, up to a solid. And then suddenly there's a gas, which is opposite of what you expect, right? Because it should go solid, liquid, gas. Instead it goes liquid, solid, gas. And so the spheres of heaven interacting with the spheres inside Earth, what they create is some membranic expression. And this membranic place is where the gradients and the pressure are perfect for growth, change, life. It's a chemical laboratory, and it's a very thin. Actually, the crust is very thin relative to the entire thing, only 0 to 100 kilometers, and that membranic crust is easily deformed by the electromagnetic force, very easily. It's just that we haven't seen it lately because we're in a stable period. And people have forgotten what happened in the past. So anyways, that's the whole point of this paper and the Atlantis paper, is that the buckling, again, I have to give credit to Professor Mayle and to DeCinti for providing several mechanisms for which there could be crustal collapse or island collapse. And these collapses were probably common enough over thousands of years that they've resulted in lots of stories. Like here's Sunderland, and you can see what's now still above water inside the darker green. But the bright green, I mean, who knows how many civilizations or how many Gunung Padangs are under the water there. And the Cherokee, had specifically mentioned that they had come from a western set of islands. and that black peoples had come in. I don't know if they sailed in or arrived, but they felt chased out. And so, did some of the Native Americans of South America actually come from Sunderland? And of course, the Easter Islanders had said that they were the last island, a remnant of a huge, a huge continent. This Mu. But when we look, how would Mu could Mu have existed? Well, the answer is clearly yes, because where was that? Page 17, was it? Where did I have it? Where was that? Hotspots. There it is. Right in the area that where Mu would have been, there are what, 5, even 6 hotspots going all the way to Zealandia. And then there's another one down there. Interesting, it's called Louisville. That's funny. Never noticed that before. So all these hotspots, if they suddenly got really hot and then the land had lifted up temporarily, and then they went dark for a little bit, the land could crash down, or maybe it could be the opposite. There's also this look at this down here at the south of South America. It looks as if something has dragged across to the right, and it isn't water. People are going to go, "Oh, that's the water." No, that's not how that works. Something has dragged this all the way over, and they don't talk about that in the plate tectonics. And you have Mauritania sank. You got this down here, the Kerguelen, that sank. Zealandia sank. We talked about Sunderland, of course, Dougherty, and High Brazil. All these places that were sinking, and you need a mechanism for that. And the current tectonic paradigm doesn't allow it. So we need a better paradigm.
Could I suggest that you look into Fiji and the topology of Fiji and the surrounding oceanic whatever's around it, the crust. It looks.
Yeah, I think that probably
it looks exactly like a hurricane. Exactly like a hurricane.
So probably what will happen is when I do Ashes of Atlantis Part 2, it will be the Zamora stuff. Probably Part 3, I will seriously get into ocean, like weird ocean crust things. For example, the Azores, Fiji, like you're talking about. This feature here south of Cuba, the Mid-Cayman Underwater Canyon, it makes zero sense in regular plate tectonics. The whole up thrust, down thrust theory that they use doesn't really hold a lot of water, so to speak. No pun intended. And these scars, they need to be talked about on Earth. They're just as important as what's on Mars. Obviously, Thunderbolts, they were pretty smart to make the one on Mars because Mars interests so many people, and it's such a good laboratory. With not much interference. On the Earth, you have all these weather patterns and fluvial interference. And so you end up with a lot of questions, what if this happened or what if that happened? Since we already have it up, and I had mentioned it earlier, I'll bring up the Carolina Bays thing. This is a different paper. Let me pull up let's see here. The quickest way to do it will probably be here. Let's see. It'll probably be. It might be an introduction. It might be.
While you're doing that, I got a question. Did anybody check out Chris from Take Back Space last night or this weekend?
No, I was with Jessica. There's the Thunderbolt I was talking about yesterday, the 56 craters in an octave. Let's see here. Can't remember if And there's the cosmic egg that used to be in Lexington on the left there. So the flat butt with the bulge and all that. So I was even covering the cosmic egg before I was covering it. Kind of funny. I didn't know I was going to end up. Here it is. Yeah, I was right. It's in the introduction for the plasma growth paper. You can see that you have some serious vector problems, but more importantly, some of them are very clearly older than other ones, especially here. And then when you look in the big yellow circle on the left, you notice that there's a series of prints, and they're each inside of the other. If there was a hole here on the older one on the right, and then something forms in the middle where the blue vector is, that would the edge on the right side of that would fall into the hole and not form perfectly. And then same thing for the newest one. So there's all these vector problems, and they're aging, and then you have ones that curve. So I want to go through and do this mathematically for his paper. That's not going to be fun and easy, but it will be worth it. And you have weird selections where there's a higher density of so-called impact, like in this long oval, yellow oval up here. And you can see the different vectors inside of those impacts. And once again, if there's a hole already and then you form a new hole, the outer edge of that would have to fall into that hole, and it's not what's happening. So it's much more like wax being stamped. The question is, what is coming along and stamping it? I'm not saying it couldn't be a telluric explosion, but the problem with that is that the explosion should create chevrons on the outside, uneven chevrons. And here we definitely have, it looks much more like movement. Now, I'm not going to buy this idea of giant elephants or something like that. That's ridiculous. That's how people like to think. Very easy.
It's like a foam. It looks like bubbles.
It very easily could be the telluric currents and then be bubbling. But then the only problem you have are these edges that push up on one side and not the other. But is
this underground water bubbling up maybe and bringing material up with it and creating these flat little ponds where it's bubbling up?
Very well may be, because if the hot spots, if the hot spot used to be there and it moved off to the east, then maybe that's what happened. I have to cover still in the other paper the thing that we found out with the gravity anomaly and the magnetic anomaly east of the Blue Ridge Mountains instead of on the Blue Ridge Mountains.
Oh yeah.
Something strange is happening in the area, and there are outer signs. Here's a zoom in of the problem. You could see on this very easily, that some craters are much newer than other craters. You can see the imprints. The erosion has created much gentler slopes on the older ones, and you could just tell they were formed at a different time. And there's again differential vectors. So the question is, what is creating this repeatedly over and over again? Originally, my theory was the moon, but we need, and it could be still the moon. It could be that the moon passes too close to the Earth, and as it goes over this area, telluric bubbling happens. And so, essentially, sort of like a
charge fractal.
It could be closer to your work. Yeah,
Charge is oftentimes fractal, so you could, they say that lightning doesn't hit the same place twice. That's BS.
It is.
So.
I got to help the patient, but you guys keep talking about this or whatever. I know that we had been talking electrogeology and consciousness, and when I come back, I want to talk some more about that. I'll leave this up on the screen, and I'll be right back.
These look a bit like paddy fields to me, a bit odd-shaped paddy fields. A system of dammed pastures. Using the water at the higher ones, and yeah, They do. They look like sort of fields.
Right. Yeah, it looks like rice fields, like where they make rice. Yeah. And it makes sense if it's in a high elevation too, because they need the water to trickle down into subsequent pools.
Well, yeah, and what I'm reading at the moment with this hydrology, ancient hydrology, is that they were actually, back when they were building Stonehenge, for example, they used canals, and they were actually lining the ancient waterways. But as the water table disappeared, the place became less wet, but they could keep the water if they lined the canals with clay, and they'd form these dew ponds, so there'd always be water there, even in the dry periods. They could maintain a water supply, and then they'd fill the moats up when there were high tides or when there were high flow in the river. They'd divert some of that and fill the moats up, and then just let it throughout the year, let it seep right through the land, use it as necessary. So it's an interesting ancient feature if it is that. I've noticed. I think I can see a farm in the middle. I don't know. I don't know how big these features are. Like, oh, there's a. Hang on. There's a key at the bottom. So, all right. So, a mile. These yellow ones are about a mile across. So these would be quite easily could be fields. Yeah, that yellow circle's about a mile across. So,
Yeah, there's some weird formations like that in Michigan too. Ow. And up in Canada.
yeah, it'd be good to log all things like that, and you see things like this as well. With a neural network filter, you could just set it off and look at maps a certain resolution, and it should outline any kind of circular feature like that. We should be able to detect them. That'd be a good little pastime as well. But yeah, that's a fairly an image processing algorithm could find a lot of those. And measure the size of them. Right, so presumably these are on the elevated land. Yeah. And this is in Carolinas.
Yep, that's the Carolina Bays.
Right. And is that to the right? You'll have to forgive me geography. Is that to the slightly northwest of, say, Florida?
Yep. Northeast.
Northeast.
Right along the coastline, pretty much north. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Well, I mean, I think that will have seen some kind of various immigration over the last 5,000 years. That area. I think people, it's like Ramon was saying, they became very defensive about who they welcomed into the into the new continent, and for good reason. For very good reason.
Well, during World War II, we pretty much let anybody in, and we just renamed them if we couldn't pronounce their name. So we didn't have borders up we didn't have high borders up at that time, that's for sure.
Yeah. But I think as well, though, there was there was such a big area to populate. You needed young families, pioneering families, didn't you, really? they all became American sooner or later. You know, I think that's quite a good thing. Yeah, I think it's a good thing. So. Well, I've got maps of Devon out at the moment as well, so I'm scrutinising these. These are the big 1.5 inch, I think 2.5 inch to the mile maps, and they've even got all the big stones marked on them. But they're absolutely thousands. But if I get down to Devon again this next month, I'm going to go have a visit and a walk around and get some photos and. So I'm going to pick myself a couple of little routes that I can walk and look at some of the specific features. And yeah, it's a fascinating landscape. I've never seen anything like it. It's tremendous. So I'm interested to show you guys this place. This is where they say, well, it's one of the tin mining places. So, you know, very early Bronze Age place. There's incredible stones everywhere.
Cool. That sounds amazing.
Yeah. Well, the legend is this is the Noah. There's a Noah legend set in this area, this particular valley. There's a full Noah legend, and it's better than the biblical one, but very similar. So there's this lady who's been researching this on the Britain's Hidden History channel. What's she called? Marshall Abrams, and she's a word sleuth. She sleuths out words and names, and she's quite good at linguistics, and so she looks for coincidental names of places now, which are talked about in these old texts, and it's quite remarkable how many she's finding. And the legend about this Noah legend, it's obviously pre-Diluvian, so antediluvian, I mean. So it'd be great if we could find more archaeological evidence, dating evidence to these structures, because maybe we'll find out when the flood was accordingly.
Probably, I'm thinking there was probably a few floods. Most likely. And,
there's got. Yeah.
If we look in the fossil record, we should have. If there was a flood, I'm gonna say a keystone indicative species would be beavers. If we see it across the whole world that there was a flood, right? There's evidence of a flood, but there should also be beavers that came along with that flood, because they're a keystone species and they're the only animal on Earth that changes the Earth changes the Earth as much as humans by what they do.
Yeah. Yeah, well, they certainly make sure there's plenty of water in the landscape, don't they? Yeah, they certainly do that. Make sure it's a very wet environment, but that holds a lot of life again. It's things speciate from that. Yeah, I think everywhere was a good deal wetter. I do.
Yeah, I myself, I've always had a real huge interest in water flow and chaos and how you can flood certain areas. I'm very much like a beaver. I'm interested in water flow. I should definitely look into being a civic engineer.
Yeah, civil engineer. Yeah, definitely. Well, it's if I go up to Doctor's Wood, I'll be building a nice little wall up there. I'm going to make a vortex and protect one of the banks there. riverbanks, and use the water in a vortex. So I don't know how I'm going to use the energy yet, but maybe just create a pool. But when it's hot in the summer, it's just lovely to sit in that water. It's just with the sun on you, it's just fantastic. So yeah, it does have a really life-giving energy. Of course it does, yeah. Brilliant.
You know, buddy, I think last night you said something that was pretty much, and before when Ramon was talking, I thought of it, where you mentioned with the, you know, like every now and then we then, you know, things tend to go into what we would term a chaotic state. Mm-hmm. Then you have the morning, then you have the morning state after it. And then it goes into a leveling out, and I suppose everything's rebuilt, re-put back together in a period of calmness. And then it sort of occurs at some point again.
I see where you're coming from, yeah. It's a, you know, it's a cycle. It's a cycle.
Yeah, but we, you know, like, does the cycle, the timeline of the cycle, who would really know it? You know, but Buddy mentioned that when you were talking last night, you know, and I thought, gee, that's pretty well spot on, Matt. You do have periods where for some reason the collective becomes distrustful, chaotic. All those systems become corrupted. That, well, I'll just put it in more human terms, say, than a cosmological term. All those systems which we believe in, and which have supported us become corrupted. We stop trusting them the same and all that, and then eventually it all leads up to a chaotic event of some form, civil, and then, like you say, after it you have like a mourning period, and then out of it comes a new time, you know, a new growth, whatever. And like when I was also today, you know, over time you've listened to all these different groups talking about population and all that, and listening to some of them talking about things such as the current climate and that, I tend to think they believe that to continue to have a living standard, say, like, well, again, back to Ramon before, a living standard like, say, the US had after, especially in the 50s, 60s, 70s. Us in England had them a bit later. I think their view is that to maintain that sort of thing, you need to have a population possibly half of what it is now. Now, that's just the way I see that things have been sort of pointed.
Yeah, there's I think electricity is cyclical. Reality is cyclical, and it's mimetic, and we don't have thoughts. Thoughts are a cascade that is actually on the heliopause. You have the heliosphere, you have the sun's heliosphere. I'm sorry, you have the magnetosphere, you have the heliosphere of the sun. And each one of these spheres receive the fundamental Bessel function, the fundamental drumbeat from the sun. The sun is singing. We know this. The science is in. The sun is singing. All the other planets are singing. Sounds of the spheres are true to some degree, as Plato talked about. And this simple song that's being sung by the sun is being sung by another system that we are being choked along the local chimney.
Yeah.
So if you have the local chimney here, excuse me, this is a question for our group. I know I talked with Jim Wenninger quite deep in detail about this, but then I forgot. And this is actually, I'm making a map, so I need to know this. Inside of our local chimney, we have the solar system. Now, the solar system's pointing. It's in a line of a circuit of a current. So, in our circuit, in our local chimney, you have the inside of the galaxy, the Milky Way galaxy. We are moving along a trajectory. So there's a filament that's in front of us and a filament behind us. And that filament is connected directly to another source. So our solar system is connected to, I think the what Jim was saying is that Sirius A and Sirius B is our what we're connected to as far as soul goes, solar system. But I don't know. That's our northernmost filament, and we're propagating right along that filament. And so, what's the lower? My question is, if that's Sirius A and B, what's the filament that's below us that's receiving our sun's energies and our solar system's energies? Does anyone know?
No, I'm in the middle, so I don't know.
Ramon, you and I should know this. We've talked about this.
I'm a little bit. So the question is, what potential neighbors are electrically connected to our current solar system? Is that what your question is?
Yeah. So you got Sirius A and Sirius B pulling us.
Yeah.
In front of us, and can you remember what was the one behind us? We're pulling it and it's pushing us.
That's a Jim Wenninger question. My head would guess the Arcturus or something like that, but I don't.
We're going around Arcturus. Sirius is on the other side of the same filament as us, and so we're spiraling around a point in between us and Sirius, and that in turn is going around Arcturus, which in turn is spiraling in the Seven Sisters, Pleiades.
So wait, the Pleiades is the next system inside of the filament.
Yeah, that's it. So we're pointing at the Pleiades. Yeah, we're traveling behind the Pleiades on that same filament.
Then what? Right. Okay, is Pleiades Sirius A and B?
No.
Then what? Then okay. So you're saying a few different things. So okay, I got the Milky Way is in the center. I'm sorry. The solar system is in the center. Now that system is in line of another system that's in front of us. That's Sirius A and B, or the
best.
Pleiades.
The best thing would be to look at Gareth at See the Pattern has a series of videos on Jim's theory, and then they have a talk that they did together, and that's probably the best way to see all of it.
I've studied it all. I understand it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think let me make sure, but I think that Jim has his own research page on here.
Because I need this information because I'm mapping out the double helical morphology of plasma and circuits into living systems. So I'm going to show how, starting from the great Laniakea superstructure, and the great attractor and the great repeller, how it's all filamentary into the breakdown of the phase transitions into every single double helical filamentary system, and we are in one. So it goes Laniakea superstructure, then I go into the Milky Way galactic electric circuit. So the Laniakea is this electric circuit itself, the superstructure electric circuit. Then you have the Milky Way galactic electric circuit. Then you have the solar electric circuit, which is the Milky Way, the Pleiades, and Sirius A and B and Arcturus. So I just need to get it right before I present it, and that's all.
Yeah, I think that this is the one, the truth about precession. So it has here the direction of the sun's movement, etc.
That's it, yeah.
I think that this is a good one, and then also, of course, the physical interviews he does with Jim. But he
very
had
good map, yeah.
Yeah, he has somewhere in here in that series. He has the spirals and shows how they're moving according to what Jim's been looking at.
Mm-hmm. Another question that I have is the Milky Way galaxy. What's our Milky Way galaxy's name again? Sagittarius?
No, it's Milky Way.
No, there's a name for our local. Oh, the center of our the black hole in the center of the galaxy.
What's the name of it?
We're on the Sagittarius spur, aren't we, of the Milky Way?
Yeah, we are Sagittarius, right? Anyway,
on the Sagittarius spur.
Yeah, we're in the spur, but SGRA is the pinch. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
The local supercluster, black hole, whatever you want to call it, the pinch.
Yeah, we call it a pinch. It's not a supercluster because a supercluster is like it's many galaxies all put together.
Yeah. Yep. I misspoke. You're right. Okay. My question is this: the whole galaxy itself, is it moving? What direction is it moving? Is it moving? I know it's maintaining its momentum, so it's probably maintaining a pretty tight pinch in the spiral galaxy arms. But is it moving in the direction of north, or is it expanding outward, or is it moving east preponderantly or west preponderantly? I guess when you look at the whole galaxy itself, is it moving along what would be the galactic jets? Is it moving along that pole? You know what I mean? The pole of the galactic jets. Or what direction is it moving?
That's a good question. It's relative motion. For sure, the stars in the Milky Way are moving along. They're moving in their general projection, and then there's a bend in the galaxy, and so they all kind of step down. So there's some kind of current sheet twist galaxy. Okay.
Yeah.
But relative inside of the arms, the stars are able to move in a little bit different direction relative to each other. But in general, it's going. What would that be? Counterclockwise, I do believe. But that is again. Gareth has all these videos that show the motions. And that's the best place to look for those is in Gareth's videos. And the whole galaxy itself. So then you add the relative motion of the galaxy.
Yeah.
The whole galaxy is accelerating towards Andromeda, and Andromeda is accelerating towards us.
Oh, okay. I need to write that down too. Okay, so wait.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you have this general elliptical motion that has a twist in it, and then you have the star is spiraling around as it does that, but then it's all being drawn inexorably towards because the whole galaxy is towards Andromeda, and then the two of them are relatively accelerating together, but they're inside of a supercluster, and that supercluster is wanting to accelerate towards another supercluster.
Right. Okay. Right. Using the great attraction and great repellers.
Correct. Yes. So there's all these relative motions. So it just depends on what you're what you're comparing it to. If you're comparing the sun to the Pleiades, that's a different discussion than the sun to SGRA. You can add them all together, but it becomes kind of meaningless because there's no up or down in space.
Right, and then really quick, you can never tell how fast something's moving as soon as you start adding up these astronomical numbers.
Yeah, they
It
get
either
the
it either
absolute
gets to the point
right.
where nothing's moving at all, or everything's moving infinitely fast.
Well, there is in one of my newest papers, there is a list of the relative velocities compared with the relative energy levels, and I would consult that table. It's probably the cosmic rearrangement paper. If I had to guess, I would go to the cosmic rearrangement hypothesis paper. I'm pretty sure that's where that table is. You had mentioned yesterday that you hadn't seen that anybody had really strong, proof. I just wanted to point out before I close this introduction here. On the top here are all three of these are astrobleams in Kentucky. The upper left one is one of the most famous in the world because there's an actual city inside.
Astrobleem? What's an astrobleem?
A crypto explosive event on the ground. The top two here are bolides that actually hit. Obviously, the one on the left might have been a comet. It was large. It was a large event. Supposedly, these mountains were, Rocky Mountain high afterwards, and quite tall. Either way, when it hit, it made this bow shock, and then it blasted a hole. That hole is known as the Cumberland Gap. It's very famous because the buffalo made buffalo traces through it, and then the pilgrims, the pioneers followed through, including Daniel Boone, and were able to settle the West. So this Cumberland Gap was incredibly important historically. But you can see that it came in and it struck, and then there were these outgassings, and then it made a bow shock. This smaller one, which was created by a meteor impact, up to an asteroid size, made what's the tallest point in the bluegrass called Jephtha. And you can again see the bow shock and the oblique strike, and then the outgassing, the outventing. And it's a farm it's all owned by one family, but they put antenna towers on the top because it's a good size, but it's not part of the electro knobs. Okay, and then but then you look at the Palladian thunderbolt here. What you notice is no bow shock. So when we have 56 craters in an octagon, and some of them exhibiting crater rim discharge behaviors, and then we have no bow shock, but we know that there's nano diamonds and other signs in here. So here's this actual thing. You can see there's no bow shock. The cracking is in an octagonal or even hexagonal formation, but there's no bow shock. So this is how we know that it's electrical. Because you had been asking. Here's the Jephtha, which was an astrobleem. It was an actual strike, and you can see the fracturing style is very different. And then these are the Hudson Bay craters, and then this is the Chicxulub, the Yucatan. And again, you can see the Yucatan is an impactor. You can see the blast out effect, but you don't see that with the Hudson Bays.
Yeah. Didn't Andy Hall just do a video about that indicative pattern right there? Of that
I don't know, but if he did, I did this 4 years ago.
Right. Well, I mean, a lot of people have been talking about this. It's not new.
I never saw anybody compare these two.
Not these two, no. But I'm just talking about that Bessel function indicative pattern with the island.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. So
craters, electrical cratering.
Yes. This I learned about from the Thunderbolts people, but comparing them directly like this, very important for people to see the obvious difference between what we know was an impactor and what has been said was an impactor. But if it's an impactor, how is the central the center taller? You can see the altitude map here. How is it taller than the outside? That's going to happen because of electricity. So these Hudson Bay craters are signs of electrical. And if there was ice there, which is highly debatable, but if there was ice, then it would have gone right through the ice. An impactor wouldn't have done that. So that's my point, is that the physical evidence is very important. That's the only thing that I wanted to bring up with that introduction. Okay, so what were we talking? We were talking about the Great Attractor.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, so this is another one of my questions. If you could look at the image that I sent to the group.
I did see you pulled one up. Let's see here.
Whenever you get a minute.
Find the chat. There it is.
Okay, so this is new huge discoveries, because I've always wondered what this outside type of, if you go to the other image here, the outside black of this tube is. The Birkeland current has an outside. It has a skin. It's all based on layers, and so we're breaking down what these layers consist of, ultimately, and not only that. They're not all completely electric. I mean, there's all sorts of other stuff going on. It's electrochemical, electrofractal, hydroelectric, holographic electric. But anyway, so you can see here on the upper image, you got the Oort cloud. This is the outer black circle around the Bessel function, or the Birkeland current. This is the whole solar system here as a Bessel function Birkeland current, field aligned Birkeland current according to Don Scott's model, and I mean, improving upon Don Scott's model and many other models of people who have come up with this theory. But I'm taking it to the next level here and showing us that there's a hypothetical cloud that we understand around this Bessel function, and you can see that it is this black, what I have highlighted in black.
Yeah.
And I just found out that the Oort cloud goes halfway to the closest neighbor. And if you go to the next slide, the next image, Ramon, you'll see that our closest neighbor here is Alpha Centauri. And our Oort cloud goes halfway, and this is not by accident. And I'm gonna show you guys what the predictive analytics here in the Dougherty set of what I'm about to predict. And we can all start making predictions just by studying the Dougherty set. But so you got the Oort cloud that goes halfway to Alpha Centauri. This suggests that Alpha Centauri has an Oort cloud as well. So I'm
most likely.
I'm predicting that there's an Oort cloud that Alpha Centauri has, and that if you go to the other image, back to the other one.
Hold on, I'm gonna show you something.
All right, the Oort clouds interact with each other, and they share comets. The comets go along these loops, these circuits, and they share comets, and they're snug together like two peas in a pod, or a peanut, where one peanut is connected to the other peanut, and there's a conveyor belt of asteroids that we share. So that's two predictions. The third prediction is that there's a Hall cloud inside of almost all galaxies, but specifically Centauri, Alpha Centauri, which means there's a name for it other than the Hall cloud. They call it but I'm not on that other image.
I don't know if you'd seen this, and that's why I brought it up. Did you know about this work? This them finally mapping out the whole shape of the solar system?
No, it looks new to me.
It's like a crescent roll.
Yeah, like a fetus.
Yeah, and so theoretically, as you're saying, the Alpha Centauri would also have a similar shape of some whatever it is. It may not be a crescent roll.
They're only showing half of the torus. The other half of the torus isn't being shown. It's there, though.
They probably haven't gotten. Probably nothing's gotten over there to measure it. But because we've only had two probes penetrate outside of the solar system's total coronosphere. But
My
cool,
point being that there's going to be boundaries that form out in space where these different bodies are interacting with each other, and I think that's the point you're trying to make.
Yep.
Yeah,
that's exactly what I'm talking about.
And that is also personified in the Great Attractor stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And what I need to find here, and I'll see if I can find. There is one that shows the motion.
Nobody knows what the Great Attractor is either, and this goes directly to the heart of my theory, which is that it's a hollow universe. Everything is hollow. That's why nothing touches, and ultimately it's all vortexture. It's all based on the vortices. All frequencies exist using dipole vortices and cascading measures from one spheroidal pressure gradient system to the next, as Russell explained. And that's the best way to explain it. It's a gradient spheroidal pressure system that has holes, and the whole thing is holy. It's holy it is, hallowed we are, hallowed be thy name,
Yes, but another key point, and this is, when I think of worms in the earth being the personification of your filaments, is that they are irregularly shaped too. And this is a really important thing about when you look at the supercluster, when you look at the solar system, its actual total shape, it's also not just asymmetric, it's organically shaped. And organics aren't really symmetric. They attempt to be symmetric, but people's bodies are not actually symmetric. They grow towards some symmetry, but they don't actually achieve it.
Right.
They have proven that people are more attracted. The more symmetric you are, the more attractive you are. They've proven that, but they've not shown that people are actually physically symmetric. There's usually a difference between right and left.
Yeah, I agree. The Great Attractor is a Platonic principle of an idealized form. It isn't actually the one, I don't think.
Yeah, I would say that, Ramon, they actually proved that if you take the symmetry of the face and you mirror it one half to the other, it creates a more ugly version of people. So there has to be a variance of asymmetry in the face for preponderance of beauty, for more beauty. But yes, it is the golden ratio. Yeah, ultimately, that's the proportion that everything's seeking after. It not only beauty, lust, love, hate, everything is the golden mean. All behavior, everything is the farthest measure from being able to become a fraction.
All right, I think this is the video that we need.
We are incommensurability personified in the highest nth degree, constantly inside of the golden mean and our trajectory.
Okay, let's see what we got here. This is about the Laniakea superstructure. I'm going to rotate this.
I think that honestly, the Ouroboros is what we're going to find at the center of these structures of what is the Great Attractor? Why is the snake eating its tail? What is the torus? Why is there toroidal rings inside of the water? I think it's going to be, look at it, dude. It's the Ouroboros. The head's going to be eating the tail. It's going to be some sort of toroidal form, which is a cobordism. It's all holes. When you study holes in mathematics, it's all cobordisms, and it's all differential algebra.
Right, but then we have so then we have Perseus Pisces. Okay, all right, getting more fine structure. Let's see what else we have here. Make it bigger. I'm going to skip ahead. Not that this is going on YouTube. I don't care about that. It's just time saving. Well, I thought, okay, there we go. So Virgo, local void. It's definitely getting more definition.
Are we bang in the middle here at 0? I suppose we are, aren't we?
Let's see. Trying to up the resolution here. There we go.
That's a torus.
Yeah.
That's a torus within a torus within a torus. That's a hop vibration. That's a twistor, according to Roger Penrose.
They put this in 3D, so if you have it on 3D glasses, you would actually see this popping out at your eyeball.
Wow.
I need to get some 3D glasses. This is a cool video.
Oh yeah, I want to get some 3D glasses and watch this. Can you share this to the group, dude?
I will end up. Yeah, I'll do that in the chat, but I also I'll put it in the description for. So now what's clear here is, you know, where our local supercluster is, because these are like mega clusters.
Yeah. Now where's Laniakea in that?
Yeah, that's the thing, is like trying to figure out.
That is the shape of Laniakea, and it looks like a heart. It's the same as a heart.
Yeah. So it's interesting because it's all being extracted down into this
void.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just like the Dougherty set. It's honestly the void. And when you study mathematics and you study geometry, there is the mathematics of what I've been studying for the past 18 years. The name of the spiral that goes towards source, where all things spring from, the vine, the wave, the truth, the life, light, is called the crystal spiral.
Well, my only problem with this is that they obviously they're not using intrinsic redshift; they're using Doppler redshift. But still, there's going to be some organic shape based on, you know, what we know about nature, what we know about how electromagnetism flows on itself, not when it's been pre-designed and trapped in copper cables, according to, you know, creating a circuit. But the circuit rules are still there. The RLC properties are still there. So I think it's pretty fascinating. You know, this crescent shape. Here somebody's compared it to a shrimp. That's hilarious. I know this idea of, you know, just plain ovals and we're just kind of floating around and nothing interesting happening. That's definitely wrong. It's not quite how Nassim Haramein showed, but there is some really interesting combination. Let me pull up. I'm pretty sure that it was my cosmic rearrangement paper.
If you go to
I'm going to find you that table.
I'm gonna pull something up here and I'll share.
Yeah, here we go. Here it is, page 10. There you go. So what I've done in this paper is took what was in magnetic universe with the current sizes and such, and then found you the relative velocities. And generally speaking, they are decreasing as you get smaller in size of current. But there are some where, you know, relative velocities are, you know, it's not exactly linear. So the next step is to get this all like graphed out somehow. There you go. Hey, Nick, you wanted something to throw into the into the database
Well,
machine.
absolutely. There's so much of this astronomical data that you know, we could throw into this lists and lists of it, really. You know, and we could get readings for every one of these and get a very accurate number taken over a length of time, you know, and immediately detect any change or in the sequence, you know, when it happens.
The hard part is some of these mainstream papers, they do things in a very non-standard way. You know, the motions of SGRA and all about SGRA, everything's kind of non-standard. But then there's other galactic jets that we can use to model. You know, and I mean, it's amazing. There is actually a paper saying that maybe some of these jets actually move at 2 times the speed of light. That's pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
10 to the 18 at a mere 10 to the 18 amps, which is insane, completely insane. So these super galactic electric circuits are definitely next level, you know. I mean, it's just really unbelievable. But anyways, yeah. So this is the table that I was talking about, and
but certainly, and as well, you could do it on a geographical basis, couldn't you? Especially these lower ones here, lightning, for example, sprites, maybe track the auroras. So we can do all these lower ones. Certainly, you know, you can get lots of data on that.
let's
Yeah.
see.
When you get a minute,
Yeah, I saw that.
when you get a minute, I put some images in there, and it shows how what you're talking about, what the map is the shrimp. Everything is the fetus shape. The shrimp, these organic shapes, are part and parcel of the torus, and the connected. That's just a screenshot. And there's another screenshot, but you can see the shrimp shape.
The head at the top, yeah.
The great attractor is the center of it. It's always being pulled towards source, and it's called the crystal spiral. It's the inverse square, inverse cube spiral. And that's where you get the periodicity of the element and Markland convection through that periodicity of that spiral, that pinching spiral that also births the galaxies themselves through Z-pinches along where the pine cones kiss noses, phase conjugation. It's all golden. It's multiples of the golden mean growing off of multiples of the golden mean. And that's called phase conjugation. And it builds these ropes and these strands. And that's what we're on. And the great attractor is right at the center of it. And the center of it is hollow, because the whole thing is hollow, because it's working off of itself. That's the best way for charge to efficient charge distribution. We already know that lightning works in collimated columns like that within itself via fulgurites and via the polygonal cratering on the moon, polygonal cratering that you're showing here on this video. That's some of our greatest evidence for the electric geology, for sure, is the polygonal cratering, which is also subsequently an exact proof that the pits of electricity are polygonal. The pits of lightning, the paths of the way that lightning discharges itself within its collimated structure. It's all polygonal.
Correct. Keep going. I'm just pulling up the M plates from Plasmaglyph paper 1.
And that's what the Dougherty set and Theodortian roots predict, is that charge moves and propagates along the edges of the spheres using polygons, because charge and plasma naturally seek the edges. So as it moves, as charge moves, and it twists and winds and grinds out its path, it's moving along the fulcrum of these geodesics that are three-dimensional cascading geodesics that show the proof. The proof in the pudding of that is the polygonal cratering that we see all over, and that's trying to prove the electric geology. So eventually, the electric geometry and electric geology are going to prove each other, and it's just going to continue to prove electric biology. Electrobiology.
Yeah, I would say correct. The electrobiology is already pretty well established, but
yeah,
electrogeology is accelerating. It's gathering more and more momentum. Looking for specific. I guess I didn't have a lot of specific ones, but the audience can look into. Go watch Symbols of an Alien Sky, Part 3. which is covers Mars. They cover a lot of the hexagonal cratering. There's also some space news videos in the Thunderbolts archive. Look into usually all the videos that have to do with cometology. They'll cover a little bit of cratering. Also, when they talk about Haumea and some of the Ceres, some of the planetoids, they cover the hexagonal cratering. Yeah, most of my plates have to do with the chains and this, lines of discharge. We'll point out to the audience that the moon is our most likely candidate for Janus because it's a two-faced god. On one side, if impactors were what were creating these big black spots, then why does the side that faces away from the Earth have so little of that? Most likely, the side that's attracted towards the Earth has been excavated by the Earth, or vice versa. However you want to look at that, it's very clearly a Jovian body. The moon,
but that if it's been excavated by ancient miners from the Earth, or just naturally been excavated, how are we going to explain the polygonal cratering all over the moon as well? I mean, almost all those craters are polygons.
How are those contradicting each other? If I have a Jovian body and it's attracted to a Saturnian planetoid, Earth,
I see,
and then there's electrical attraction, then the two are excavating each other. Then you have you're going to have polygonal behavior on this blackened side.
So you're saying, sorry, you were just too advanced for me. I didn't follow, but now, so what I think you're saying here is that there's like these tunnels that are connected directly to Earth's atmosphere that are tunneling vortices of material from the Earth to the moon, from the moon to the Earth.
It has because the moon changes in apparent size to us because it has an irregular pathway, and so that irregular pathway it goes in and out. I don't know if you've seen. Look here.
Can you just, before you get on that, can you just answer what I was saying? You're saying that they're connected, like a bunch of strands are connected from the moon to the Earth, right? Like Birkeland currents, kind of.
You could say it that way. It's an electric field, so it's constant. Okay. But if they got close enough, then you would get spontaneous excavation. Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that the other side of the moon doesn't look like this. Do you have image? Do you have proof of image? I don't know. We don't have an image of the other side of the moon. I don't know how you know this.
I was just showing it. It looks like really? On the right side. That's the back side of the moon.
Wow. How did we get that picture? Oh, I guess we could.
Satellites went around it.
Well, apparently the moon interacts with Venus on some orbits and Mars as well as the Earth, and so you will get these charges jumping from Venus, and then when it goes around and Mars is on the next the other side of the Earth, the charge will jump from the moon to Mars on that alignment, and so. And so we're always machining this closest face off the moon.
Attracted to us because it's a Jovian body and we're a Saturnian body, and so there's a remnant of attraction between the two.
So Jovian body means that it's connected to Jupiter, right?
It came from Jupiter. We picked it up in the period covered by the Enuma Elish.
All right, yeah, because sometimes when you say some of this stuff. I can interpret it, but I just want to make sure because I mean I don't know a lot of this stuff. I'm
here. We go.
I got into this because of the geometry of Birkeland currents, but
here we go. I want you to look at the solar eclipse prediction map, and they're pretty precise with these.
Yeah.
So
X marks.
Notice that the directions change. The widths change, so the projection, like where the actual blockage, that means that the moon is coming closer and going further away. And relative to the Earth, it is not a straightforward only path. Of course, it's always going in the same one direction, but it's not like a perfect ellipse going around, and it forms after a time. It forms an analemma, but people don't remember that analemma also travels across the sky, so it doesn't stay in one place. So the moon is on is never found a stable orbit. So in the past, if you step that back, when the moon first came in, it would have been on a highly changing. It would have come very close. It would have gone far away. It would have swung back in. I mean, there's all sorts of destructions, and there are several South American tribes that said specifically that it caused deluges, not deluge, but great floods, mega tsunamis. And
I'm sure it did, because I remember that last big eclipse we had around here, and it was midday when on a bright day as well. And as soon as the eclipse went over, clouds came down, and they stopped for like 3 days. And it weren't just clouds; it was like a fog followed it. You know, as the birds go silent, and then this fog happened, and it just went from a lovely day to a real pile of shite, you know, a horrible day. You know, it was just oppressive.
I happened to be at the Thunderbolt conference and experienced it with everybody out front.
Yeah.
Right outside.
Did you find it? I mean, it's uplifting when you see it, but the atmosphere after is actually it's almost like it gives you a headache.
Well, it came through
actually the weirdest.
It was very nice.
The weirdest thing that I noticed is actually, I mean, I was around everybody from the electric universe. I mean, everybody was at the conference. It was the very end of the conference, and then the solar, everybody was packed up, getting ready to leave. Like, that was the end of the conference, the very end. It marked the end. So we're all outside getting numbers, talking to each other, hanging out, playing with the solar eclipse, using glasses, and Wall Thornhill stayed inside, and he didn't even want to come outside. He refused to come outside. I think I even asked him why, and it was some sort of maybe a hogwash kind of excuse. It was kind of like, oh, it's just the solar eclipse kind of thing. Like, I'm like, what? I'm like, come on out here, you know, like, we're all out here, let's go. And he just stayed inside, but all of us went outside and had fun.
He's a strange bird. I also want to point out two other things. One is that the 2024 one is going to be going in a very different orthogonal direction than the 2017 and 2045 ones, and that the spacing between these is not regular, right? The time length between predicted solar eclipses is not a regular number. And again, some of them curve in very strange ways. So
that's my 40th birthday. April 8th, 2024 is my 40th birthday.
Oh, wow.
And it's right there by where I was born, you know. So I'm gonna have a huge birthday party, speaking of which.
Well, I'll be there.
Yeah. I'm thinking Niagara Falls for sure. It goes right over Niagara Falls, so it's gonna be a full event. Yeah,
it does. That's a good plan. Let's invite everybody who is into the show. Come to Niagara Falls. Buddy's birthday, 2024. We're gonna have an electro party, and we'll remind everybody that the moon is not natural to the Earth. It is our watcher, and it has been.
Can you imagine being at Niagara Falls during the full solar eclipse? It's a full right there. That's the spot, Buffalo, New York.
It's going to be at its peak, actually, right over the area.
Yes, it's going to be great. So yeah, we got to do a big event there, but I want to stay away from the water so nobody jumps in, because people have plasma pulls people in, as Dan Winter says.
They'll probably have like security there to make sure no crazies try to do anything.
I'm sure they will, but it never stops anybody from jumping.
I want to point out that the eclipse is also going to go right over the Higgs Dome down there at the Garden of the Gods, Illinois. So that's another good place for people to go and celebrate the electric universe stuff. It's Garden of the Gods, Illinois, Southern Indiana, Higgs Dome, where there's a magnetic anomaly and not a gravity anomaly. And there's all the Lysagang band. The Lysagang bands have been extra bent from a definite electric. So you said, when you said that yesterday, I was like, does Buddy not remember me covering this? But we have rocks from the Garden of the Gods that show polarity behaviors that are impossible with fluvial behaviors, and it has to do with the Lysogang banding. So we've got some really good stuff in this general area, but I'm interested in the Virginia magnetic and gravity anomaly. Obviously, I think the Desert Southwest is good stuff. I don't know if I'm completely behind Andy Hall's giant vortex yet, but I do find the fractal Earth stuff compelling. The geometries that show up consistently on the Earth and the loops, etc. So that's why I put them in the electric circuit paper. Which, by the way, buddy, you never provided your circuit loops for the Earth. So I ended up with only 3 circuit loops for the Earth for that business circuit paper. So
I know
maybe,
I thought about it the other day. I'm like, maybe you can update it and I can give you some images.
you could do it that way, or it could go in, like I say, in one of the PIMS, it could go in one of the Atlantis series papers, or it could go in the PIMS 2 paper. The PIMS 2 paper is going to work in conjunction with the Atlantis, Ashes of Atlantis Part 2, the Zamora debunking, and the 2 will be a yin-yang pair. I often write papers that are yin-yang pairs. So like POS theory, its yin-yang pair is going to be change theory. And the business circuit flow is, you could consider it a down, a sequel to the financial addendum series, but it's really actually a polar pair with the financial velocity paper. So a lot of the Dether paper, I guess it would be. So a lot of these papers, they form a yin-yang pair because some of the subjects are difficult. Sort of like the PIMS paper, its polar pair is the Unboxing Atlantis paper. So I had to find the hotspots from that, but it's hard to talk about the hotspots without talking about Hijin theory. And in the same thing within the Hijin paper, you can't really talk about the plasma electromagnetic sky without talking about the hollow expanding, growing electromagnetic Earth. And the two are related, and that's the whole reason for talking about the spheres of heaven and spheres of Earth, because without talking about those spheres interacting with each other in some kind of manner where the crust is a membrane, you really miss the greater picture. In my opinion, that's just my opinion. The obsession with one or the other is going to be a problem. Like geologists are so focused on the innards of the Earth that if they don't study electrometeorology, they're not going to see the electrogeology. And if the meteorologists don't study the electrogeology, I don't really see how they can understand real meteorology. I think they will always be limited, and they will keep separated. So I think it's very important that the polar pairs are studied. Same thing with, I think that theoretically, studying the electrogeology of the east of the United States, you're not going to really get it if you don't study the West. And if you don't study the West, then you're not going to understand the East. Vice versa, And that would be north south too, like so North America, South America, Eurasia, Africa. I think that these polar pairs are going to be very important to use together. I think Hudson Bay versus Titicaca, the Gulf of Mexico and that whole like Cuban that anomaly there, and then you think Mediterranean. These polar pairs, I think, are absolutely essential to really getting the true PIMS science. That's just my theory.
Yeah. That's. I mean, you got to have the positive lead and the negative lead, or the anode and the cathode, to pull together to create the circuit. They're working together. But I have physical proof of high voltage electricity and moving through rock, and it's not a fulgurite. It changes the consistency to a different the consistency of the rock to a different medium. It literally creates a river of magma when I do this in a rock, and it heats it up, and then it pulls the metals out of the stone towards the circuit. So I'm doing experiments in the quote unquote lab here high voltage electricity experiments directly into rock. Now we need to take this to the next level here and get this rock that I created, that I gave to Susan too. Susan has one of the rocks that I made. I have one of the rocks. They're called, I named it fractalite. And these rocks should be able to be brought to the lab and tested. Whatever the rock turned into, there's going to be a name for the type of rock, the rivers that are created. Real quick, Ramon, if you pull up on YouTube, you can see a picture of this rock that I'm talking about. Now, we've done studies.
Well, you got to tell me what I'm pulling up.
If you pull up the geometric view,
Okay.
Just go to the page, and if you just look at one of the images here, if you scroll down a little, that one, see that rock?
You talking about the Mike Ferrero one?
Yeah, I'm just showing the rock, just the cover of it before you go to it. Maybe pause it. But yeah, I don't know how to get the picture of it. You can't really get the picture of it.
Right.
Oh, there it is. So these rocks that I make in the lab can be tested. I'm trying to prove electric universe geology. Okay, that's what we should all be trying to do. Prove this, right? So I've been trying to do this. We've been talking about it for years. Instant fossilization. We can't find and we can't get a hold of that couple in Canada to get the instant fossilization. But what we do have is these rocks that I make that create different types of other rock inside of it. We can take that sample and then go around the world and find other minerals and rocks that are similar to what I've created and show that indeed is the same thing that I did in the lab that is in the ground right here. Get it? You know what I mean?
Go ahead. Yeah.
That's proof. No, that's it. Then you can show that we made this in the lab. It produces these chemicals. These are the other chemicals that it makes. These are the other rocks and elements that it created, and maybe not elements, but you know what I mean. Different fusions. And then we take that specimen and we can go to other places that we think are electrical scarification on the Earth and test for those minerals and those composites and see a match, a lab match, and a field match. That would be not proof, but more evidence to suggest electrical geology.
Are you separating well, you're obviously separating the existing minerals in the rock into the metal and not, so that using the electrical field,
One second on that question, because I'm going to have to go pull the things. I just want to show these images real quick because you guys had brought it up. The Milky Way, is on this filament. It looks like it'll be pulled this way towards the center of Laniakea. And then, this one's like unfortunately small. But anyhow, it's showing that the sun is moving in this bent-like manner around the Milky Way, and it's turned. It's not exactly like flat. Like, so the elliptical is not flat to the elliptical of the Milky Way itself. And then it's moving along this the spur here. So it's generally going along with the rotation. But it is, moving kind of non-flat relative to the center. And there were several groups, and it's not exactly clear to me whether or not these groups are moving in a Birkeland current around each other or not. So, okay. Anyways, you guys I got to go help the patients. I'll be right back. Continue with your the thing you were talking about there.
All right. So I pretty much said what I needed to say about the rock. See what you guys think, because
I was asking the question, obviously a rock with more some minerals will just yield more when you put the current through, I would expect. What I'm saying is, for example, if you found a bit of copper in your sample or something like that, I suppose we know where the copper areas are in the world. Would you find the same? Would you find the same? Oh, bloody pigeons! Would you find the same geological features around there?
Right.
So,
Like you would expect to find, like Michigan itself has, I heard, the most rocks out of anywhere in the world.
yeah, I've heard that as well. It's very mineral rich, isn't it? Especially with copper, like.
Diverse as far as the diversity of rocks go. Yeah, I heard it has one of the most in the world. Different types and species. So, and that was, they claimed, from the glaciers and the glacier till and picking up rocks and dropping more rocks. But it might be due to hang on, sorry, I just got a message. I lost what I was saying.
Well, the Michigan environment, the Michigan geology, why there's such a diversification of material there.
It could be electricity, but I don't think electricity produces profundity of different elements of rocks. But that's what we're actually theorizing it does. So maybe it does.
Well, I mean, as far as the way that I was looking at it is sort of these massive currents come up from deep underground and kind of whirl around the surface. But on the way up underground, if they connect with a lightning fork, for example, you've got I don't know, terawatts of electricity going through a specific, a channel in the ground, and then the metals will form along those channels in superheated, in a superheated water environment maybe, and crystals will be growing on the sides of the chambers that are created, and so you get profundity of minerals and.
Yep, instantaneous too. I mean, we see how we can accrete different metal. If you have a nickel-rich calcide or nickel-rich water, right, and then you put charge in it and an electrode, it starts to build a crystal.
Yes, exactly. This is what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yes, it's true. This is the truest way that we can prove electric geology. We're already showing that it's true. It's how you secrete minerals or deplete minerals out of one thing into its pure form, raw form, at another spot. So
yeah.
Wherever there's a metal crystal that's attached on a rock, that's where the charge was being pulled straight out of that point in the rock.
Yeah, wow. And what if, for example, you made your own concretion of rocks with certain minerals in it, and then certain water pathways in it, and see if you can replicate on a scale, on a very small scale, what would happen if there were X amount of charge coming through the Earth's atmosphere from a neighboring planet or comet or anything, or the moon or whatever, when we do have these conjunctions, if we can know how much energy is being exchanged between the planets and the various bodies around the solar system, I don't think our energy only comes from the sun. There's energy coming to us from other cosmological sources, and so it's all part of modelling that the general electric circuit, isn't it? The general circuit.
Yep, it all comes down to us doing what we were just doing today, showing our position in the Great Attractor, the Laniakea, the Milky Way, the local chimney, sun to earth, electric currents, Earth to moon electric currents, the global electric circuit, the tubes of plasma around the globe, helicon physics, proving how a Birkeland current docks on a spheroid. What patterns does the docking promote and produce, and what patterns are they indicative of, and showing how it's actually the blue whirl, multiple sequences of the blue whirl that are heterodyning phase conjugation on top. That's how the auroras form, and we can see them. Then you go into the globe, into the electric telluric currents, and how they're connected to the transient luminous events, TLEs.
Yeah.
The sprites, the Alps, connected directly to lightning, the hydromycelial electro network as one. The more water, the more electricity, the more lightning, the more creatures, the more carbon, the more living life, the more diversity.
Yeah.
And then you connect it to the ionosphere, ball lightning, skyrmions, DNA, collagen. Everything's helical. The whole entire path from everything to everything is helical. And the greatest memory bank in all of it that we know of is DNA. But there's more information probably in a Birkeland current than DNA, and we just don't understand that fully yet.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure.
Well, DNA braids life in Birkeland current. So you could think of the breakdown of the Birkeland current into each one of these individual filaments, and the fray of all of the Birkeland currents, the very edge of the fingertips is DNA, and that's what life is. The very edge of the Birkeland currents, the end of it, if you will, and the end of it actually recycles back into it through the hydroelectromycelial network. It's all wrapped together.
I think that's I think that's right. Just a point when you were mentioning the DNA, it forms this helical, what's it, a caduceus, and that's how I see our relationship with Sirius as we travel through the around. I think it's Arcturus. I think it is. We're the other side of the snake, if you know what I'm saying. You know, we're twisting around with this other one, which is Sirius.
Yep.
So yeah.
I think we're twisting around it in the same filament, but it's way ahead of us, and we are feeding whatever's happening in Sirius A and Sirius B is being replicated here on Earth. So I think life is flowing through those filaments, coming out of Sirius A and B, filling the sun. The sun is being powered by some systems in Sirius A and B. That holographic information that is being powered through the Z-pinch of our sun is then taking and transmitting that information from Sirius A and B to us. I think maybe things can't, ideas can't replicate, and the habits of ideas can't replicate the behavior, or the archetype of a human or any other creature cannot exist until it goes through the void. The void is, quote unquote, the black hole, the Z pinch, the Z pinch, the great attractor through the center. The blueprint or the idea of it can't crystallize unless it goes through. Not even the body itself has to go through the center of the great void. If just the creature dying, and the spirit of the creature and the essence of the creature, the electrical memory of the creature going through the void, can then replicate that creature on another galactic system. So it's a memory embankment type of thing.
Yeah. I think you went through a lot of ideas in that last couple of sentences, but you know, maybe have to pick that one apart a little more.
It's a Rupert Sheldrake type of morphogenesis, and the idea of a human can't appear here on Earth through our solar system or even our galaxy until it gets crunched, or the idea gets made in Sirius A and B first and reflects that imagery and that mimicry of that idea back to the solar system on the Milky Way galaxy. Likewise, as we continue to grow new species here on Earth through negentropic, the life-giving source, as new systems come into existence through speciation, just as creatures are going out of existence through extinction, through speciation, we can see the new creatures that come into existence are not only based on our biology and our habitat.
It's a morphogenic field, It's a morphogenic field precedes us almost, and we're receiving information from other morphogenic fields, only the ones that we can perceive.
Yep. And that idea, it's just like if I were to have a new idea or crystallize a new element or chemical reaction that's never occurred on the planet yet. Yeah. That chemical reaction would start occurring instantaneously in other galactic systems just because I created it here on Earth. That memory of it is akashic and it's instantaneous.
Yeah.
The universe thrives on novelty. So how it thrives on novelty, but it looks like everything's always staying the same to us because we don't have an idea of galactic timescales. But it's always changing. That's the only guarantee in nature, is that it's going to change. Change is the only permanent. So if change is the only permanent, and all things, new species are always coming into existence and old species are going out of existence, and they're curtailing off of other magnetohydrodynamic morphogenetic fields from other galactic structures. So they're all, it's a synaptic, it's a universal synaptic structure, but it's still semi-localized. Unless you become a galactic federation of a light creature, then and you become to that level of capacity, which most people go insane. Dare you take yourself down the void and see what it has for yourself.
Well, I think the next step forward is more of the ability to mind meld. If sort of the next level of complexity can be broken by many minds rather than just one. And I think if we can learn how to communicate effectively and think on more of a group, if it's, I'm not running down individuality and the ability to work alone or think alone, but just like a multi-celled organism is probably more efficient than lots of little single-celled organisms. And then
we're already doing it through all of our through all the social media and everything. We're already a huge hive mind huge global creatures. Everybody's global, and we're all branding ourselves and our identity and our image, and that's what people are making money off of right now, themselves, for free. Just uploading stuff and content, being themselves. And that's contributing to the larger fractal collective hive mind. But the problem with this quickly comes when you get into mass psychology and mass behavior. People tend to, once they sway in a dangerous opinion, everybody jumps on board, and bad things happen when groupthink comes together easily, just the same as sometimes good things happen. Mass psychosis is the dangerous thing.
Yeah, I think, yes. I think, again, it's information. I think if you can present true and true and honest information, and it isn't. It hasn't got an ulterior motive other than to provide information. Well, that's what I suppose all the newspapers got bought up, all the TV programs got bought up, and look at yeah, it's not really worth buying that kind of media nowadays because there's no content in it.
You're talking about Netflix, Hulu, and
yeah,
stuff like that. Yeah,
afraid so. Yeah. I think various bits of social programming gets kicked out occasionally if they want to change a particular idea. It'll appear in all the soaps. The next couple of weeks they'll do a theme on it, one after the next. It's quite incredible, really, and just to illustrate how the coincidentally how these soaps are working now. There's one Coronation Street that goes on that started in this country in about 1960 odd, and I think the first murder in it was in about 1981, and the nation was horrified. And then since about 2000, there's almost one a week, you know. So it's lost all plausibility and just succeeds to scare people socially, you know. So yeah, it is happening, and but some people are very comfortable in that world. They never miss it, you know. So that's what we got to fight against, really. I don't know. I don't know if there's a way to do that. Ignorance.
yeah, we're always self-defeating creatures. So
Yeah.
probably continue to move in that manner, unfortunately.
No, well, you guys do all right, certainly. You know, all out people, and impetus is moving forward as well, which is a great thing. You know, people are actually striving forward, and it's a great thing. It's nice to see it happening, and all the best of luck, and that's that. So yeah, so it is looking like a quite a massively holistically integrated network as well. I really like how Gerald Pollock explains the water exchange, how it's involved. His series of lectures is fantastic. I might have a rewatch of those pretty soon. And he does talk about this electrical exchange right into the deep earth. He's probably got an understanding of geology on that electrical basis. I do like his. Sorry.
You know who else talks great about that and has a good theory is he was in our group. Man, can't remember his name, but he talks about how the Earth, there's extremophiles inside the Earth, and the extremophiles themselves are bacteria, and they constantly build up and proliferate, and that's what accounts for the slippage between the continents.
All right, yeah.
It's all electric. The whole thing is electric. Living creatures and within living creatures, and they build bodies, and it creates slippage. He was Eugene
Bagashov.
Yeah, Eugene Bagashov. He was in our group for a long time, and we would all talk about that.
Right.
So he gets really into the electric ocean floor and the bottom of the floor, and how it goes into the earth. And I mean, dude, honestly, the whole damn thing's alive. It's crazy.
It is. It's absolutely alive. I don't completely go with this subduction thing too much. I suppose there is evidence of it somewhere. But I don't think it's a feature that often happens, unless it's one of these big cracks like the Mariana Trench. I don't know if things are subducting down there, but I think there seems to be a lot more land building than subducting. I don't know, but it's I don't know. It's not as plausible, the subduction, as the its opposite, really. It don't, you never get to see any land coming disappearing underground. Just getting sucked down there. So it's one of these billion-year things. You need a very slow motion camera to see it. Although maybe it doesn't exist. But certainly again, I think it's all these currents, and I think seems like the Earth's surface seems to float along like a scummy material on top of something else, and along defined currents, swirling around currents. So, like you say, the archipelagos look like they've been kind of flicked away from the bottom of the continents. The Caribbean archipelago and the Horn of South America. As it swings right across to Antarctica, there, all these massive archipelagos traveling for 1,500 miles. Kind of one volcano popping up out the sea after the next. Just amazing structures, really.
Yeah, those are the hot spots we were talking about earlier.
They're the things that move along and create the next Hawaii or whatever. Yeah,
they stay in place. New Zealand's one. Yellowstone is one. Apparently, and they create these archipelagos because they just stay there and rip the crust into. They keep producing volcanoes.
Yeah.
Well, I see Mike is in the call here. Mike, what do you think the hot spots are? He might not be available to talk. Anywho,
I see Sean, but I don't see Mike.
Yeah, Mike Ferreira. Maybe it just shows that he's. Oh yeah, he's not on the call. Wait, who is? I see Nick, Ramon, me. Yeah, I think Mike's on it.
It's Buddy, Nick, Ramon, Sean is shown, but he's muted, and myself.
How are you doing, Andy?
Yeah, good, man. I'm just sitting back quietly listening. Yep. So the hot spots. Well, again, I think if you go back to some of the talking about, expansion technologies and the fella you mentioned with the fourth phase of water, Gerald Pollock, Nick.
Yeah.
Down to again what Buddy was talking about yesterday. With your photons and electrons is consciousness, and it all keeps working back up, and gradually we may be expanding. But the other thing is, when you're talking earlier with DNA and the Sirius and all that, would not it be too that everything works in pairs, Buddy? Like, for instance, you've got your plus, your negative with your electrical. So wouldn't it be reasonable to consider that everything's working or dancing in a pair? And then in the middle, you get that piece in the middle, which is, I can't remember what you were calling it, but like a dark matter.
Yeah, I think there's a parity to everything. That parity is what builds the charge.
Yep.
That charge and charge separation itself. It's like the tunnel within a tunnel within a tunnel of. All I can think about is physics girl did a pool experiment where she takes a frisbee and she shows you how one vortex is connected to another vortex in a half a donut, and she puts red and dye in one and blue dye in the other, and it shows how the shells of the vortices wrap around each other and create the next shell of the vortice on the inside through counter rotation, like Birkeland currents. So this is a visual experiment that you can see. And when I think of everything, that's all I see. Everything is the Ouroboros. That is the Ouroboros. That is the head, the cephalization of the head being created with a body and a tail. It's like sperm. It's like the shrimp shape, the fetus shape, the fetile shape, the half a torus. The fetus fits perfectly inside of a torus. So if there's a toroidal field around a fetus, you can fit a fetus and move a fetus around inside of a torus. Perfect. Think about it. I mean, just create the number 9 with your right hand right now and move it around. It fits perfect inside of a torus in almost all angles, and it could incubate in a torus, toroidal, you know.
The 9, again.
Yeah.
Right.
Number 9, number 6, the or G, lowercase g, capital case G. Number 7.
Yeah.
7th letter of the alphabet anyway. But just like the Laniakea structure or the solar system we saw Ramon was showing earlier in the images, it is that umbilical type of shape that really it's a beginning shape, what I like to call beginning, because there's beginning, middle, and end, which is Birkeland. Birkeland is beginning, middle, and end. Birkeland. And Birkeland is a place in my novel that I'm writing where God resides, because God is that which was, which is, and which shall be yet to come. That type of understanding in the Bible is just talking about the God of the future, past, and present. That's what the God is of the Bible. It's sure people can say that at least the biblical God of the New Testament in Revelation, the God who was, who is, and which is yet to come. That
I mean,
God,
the one king,
who already
right?
Came, yeah, the one who went, and that God is explaining and describing what is inside of the circuitry that we're talking about: the vine, the way, the life, the truth. This all the way throughout the Bible, they're talking about Birkeland currents the entire time. We could sit here and do an entire episode or a 10 series episodes about Birkeland currents in the Bible, and the smoke, the pillar of smoke that was followed during the day, and the pillar of fire during the night, and how to create pillars. It's easy to create a pillar of fire. You can do it at home through home experiments. Super easy. Backyard Scientist teaches you how to do this on YouTube. I've done it, and it's actually some of the coolest geometry ever. All you need is you take 2 C's. You take your thumb and your index finger and put them together in a C, 2 interlocking C's, and that is the shape. You put a flame, you put a candle in the center, and you have to create that offset to allow air to come in 2 little channels, one on each side, and you create a cylinder, 2 cylinders with the C shape in your fingers, and that's it. You create a pillar, and you allow counter rotation of air to move through it, and it creates a pillar of fire. You can even create different color pillars of fire. He shows you a bunch of cool ways how to do it.
All right, let me jump in on this before we roll through the topic, because I think it is important that people understand that the God is also not purely hypothetical. There is evidence of the physical representation of the God. Specifically, you go Jehovah, you can see Jehovah is Jove, is Jupiter, and that the ancient people saw the body, including its parts, as a representation and part of the great God above, the great man. So there's this paper, Who Answered the Shang Diviner, and it's interesting because without the electrocosmology, he is asking an interesting question. When the Shang oracle, the Shang dynasty, the people used the oracle bones on the tortoise and femurs when they would write, and then they would toss it in the fire and get the cracks. Who are they actually talking to? Because when they read it, they see of course the spirit world, and then they see a god, a monotheist god, and then they also see a god who has body parts, but those body parts are him as well. And this goes directly to the concept of the Elohim, Elohim, which most is our best representation that this god above, Shangdi, was an actual planet with satellites, and these satellites were they answered to him, so that Hermes was not a separate god from Zeus, but was also part of Zeus, and was this messenger that represented. And when we look at the Bible, we see the angels are the same way. They don't have individual personalities. They are all, but they answer to God, but they are God. They are still portions of God.
There's different personalities. There's archangels. There's a bunch of different personalities.
There's categories. No, there's categories. That's not the same thing as angels.
Yeah. There's hierarchical levels of heaven and hierarchical levels of angels and patterning.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
There's hierarchies. And so what we see, where do we see hierarchies? We see them within the solar system. We see the gas giants. Then we see rocky planets, and we see moons, and then we see asteroids below that, and comets. And so we see these
Van Allen belts close to Earth, and also the levels of our atmosphere. Everything is layering on levels of onion layering.
Right. So when I looked into, so I took his paper, and then I looked into, and this is the Shangdi Heaven and Tao paper. I looked into the actual plasmaglyphs. First of all, interesting fact, this very first plasmaglyph on the upper right shows up in Kentucky. So we have it at the Spratt site, where there are stone mounds, which probably means either Chinese or Arthurians. So then you look here on the lower right here, the hexagram for thunder. It's in its background, J25046. You could see the sumo stomp. But when you look, it's actually a plasmoid, and there's energy running between the two. So that tells us a couple things. One, the sumo stomp, which I have a whole sumo paper, that sumo stomp goes all the way back to the Cataclysm period. So that's how we know that sumo is a Shinto tradition and not just some agricultural thing that turned into a sport. It's an ancient Shinto tradition. And then as we go forward, there are a few of these plasmaglyphs, which are really fascinating. Right now, by the way, Robert Hawthorne's doing some really good stuff in the background. If he'll ever write it up in a paper, he's been sending me. He's finding all these plasmaglyphic shapes, new ones for us to look at, and finding more convincing evidence that Peratt's initial vision is the correct one. But we see here we have different. We have the star glyph over on the right. We have in the Lu Shitong. And then we have several of the star glyphs working together, and then they change size. There's like the bigger ones and the smaller ones. Long story short, when you look at all of these, one thing becomes very clear from the study of when you compare the Kolbrin with the Chinese, and it's a separate paper, the weapon, which is called the ge, the word ge is a homonym for oneself, as in the god. But the ge is also a trident warrior. It's a halberd, and it has the alpha fish in the symbol. And so the oneself is the weapon, which means the god is the force. And when when the force came from the planetoid or was induced by the planetoid or the gas body or whatever it was also the god. So the god was Jupiter. But then when the god sent the moon, and then the moon would cause a thunderbolt on the earth, then the moon became the messenger, and that moon being the messenger came also from the father. So that the father in the ancient world, the god was an extension of the force that went throughout everything. And so so when, for example, when Zeus topples Kronos, it's not just Kronos that he's toppling, but he's toppling the godhood. He's becoming the god and the manifestation, which then upset them because he would never sit on his throne. He was wandering all about the sky because our orbit was never, stable around Jupiter. And what they wanted was a star like Shamash that would sit in the center and be a fertility god and a storm god. They didn't want a war god. They wanted a fertility storm god. And so they were constantly looking for one of these gas giants to fulfill that role. Sometimes when Poseidon or Neptune would come near, then they wanted to worship that. And so you see this alternation. You see the four crosses for the four gas giants. You see the above man holding the four gas giants underneath. And look at L2 21874. You have the thunderbolt, you have the great man with the Saturnian symbol, and then you have the great man above with the four gas giants under his arms. And these are all for thunder, which is literally, when you look, literally means earthquakes. So the earthquake
Isn't
was
there Isn't there the tetragrammaton involved here? Isn't that
yes, this is the tetragrammaton. So you see that the tetragrammaton is the one god above, because the one god above is the of course the symbol for the great man above, but he's holding the four gas giants, meaning the four gas giants represent him. They are him, but obviously he is above that, and he is the force, and he is also the thunder. So you see the thunderbolt on the right, you see the great man with the Saturn head, and so they've combined it all into one, and they're calling that thunder, which is pretty interesting. Because when you look at the rune for the T rune, it's called Tehran, and Tehran means thunder. And when you look at Odin, it's actually Odin. It's pronounced Odin, as in thunder. And now the
Iran anything having to do with that? Because I'm thinking of countries and providences. I've heard of a Tehran. Isn't that a place here on Earth?
Well, Tehran is, yeah, but Tehran is T-A-R-A-N. I have no idea. We'd have to do a deep search on that to see if Tehran is named after Tehran. It is in the right area, though. Like Tehran is in the area where you would see a lot of the Tepe period activity. And here is Qian. Qian is heaven. Okay. And so when you look at the background for the concept of heaven, you see all sorts of plasmaglyphic activity. You see the Alwyn shape. You see the squatter. You look at that L07191. You see the Peretz squatter man on top of the Saturn. So again, the idea that the man is the God man is above the actual gas giant, but they are one. And in L07193, we see the three godheads, and we see the Alwyn glyph, and we see the Triforce power, the wind power forming, and we see the flow of energy coming down, and it's repeated. Remember, all these are images. They're all for Qian, and Qian and Jin. Jin, obviously, the CH sound is how the Chinese heard the thunderbolt. Like we do th in our culture, but for them it was ch. Very interesting. And so the plasmaglyphics, they just keep showing up and up. was one that came up the other day. Here's the one for the blue-green, meaning the color of the, because they didn't have a difference between blue and green. And when we start seeing the hexagon, meaning that it's related to Saturn somehow. And here is the hexagonal glyph. So this is all the background for Sun. And when you look, it goes back to the hexagon, which means it goes back to Saturn. Here's the again the same glyph, but in the Lu Shitong, and you see more plasma glyphs that go back. You even see the crescent, the crescent boat. So Dave Talbot's not wrong. It's just the matter of the era when it's coming from. We're talking between 3 and 6,000 years ago. That's when these glyphs came around. So they were already well devolved from the period when the Shamash had broken down.
Would you allow me to play devil's advocate again here with this?
Yeah, you can go ahead. It's pretty robust, so I don't worry about that.
Okay, so I mean, I do like how robust it is, actually. At first, I'm like, okay, and then you really get into it, and I'm like, oh, you almost sold me, but it's hard to get sold on anything these days because there's so much craziness, and I'm glad it's hopefully putting up some skepticism and some guards up on some people.
No, people do need it. I wish they would study the etymology of words. Even in the Latin, there's a whole lot of good information that comes out of the Latin. Like this whole gender movement of saying genders don't exist or whatever. You can go look up, and it all goes back to male, female every time, 100%.
Oh, that's the double helical braid of duality. Actually, what's going on here is the male female are part and parcel of something called a toroid. A toroidal, literally, this is the okay, if DNA compactifies if life compactifies information in DNA, compactified hierarchical information of our space DNA would be in a toroid. And a toroid is not male or female, it's both. So,
correct.
So that's what creates sex duality in the majority of vertebrate creatures. You flip anything over and you is it a boy or a girl? You flip it over and you check. Anything you find on the ground, anything you find, any animal.
You were going to play a little devil's advocate on the plasmaglyphics or something like that?
Yeah. So, okay, when I'm looking at these, I work with a lot of sematicists, and this would be a great battle between you and sematicists. But what I'm seeing here is very similar characteristics and characters that come up in a lot of sound and vibration on water, on the Bessel function on water, because that's all we're looking at is the Bessel function is when you're looking at cymatics. It's only the top of how vortices work in water, unless you start doing the other stuff like Dave Schiermeyer and other people are doing, which you do bubble cymatics or cymatics with different materials, and you can look at how the sub-vortices pump up the top of the water so you can see the three-dimensional cymoglyphs, right? But what I'm suggesting here is that all of these characters could probably come up and probably do come up when you beat the drum with sand on it, when you play the vibration with a violin on a plate, a Chladni pattern.
That's the long way. I hate to interrupt, but that's the long way around to what was really happening. What was really happening is they were looking in the sky. They wanted to commune with what was in the sky. They didn't have any way, couldn't call it up or anything, so they carved onto bones these symbols, and then they tossed them in the fire, and they would get cracks, and they would try and interpret the sound and direction of the cracks, and they would pose it in polar, yes, no. So they'd be like, rain today? Yes, no. Marriage today? Yes, no. And then they would interpret, they would try to talk directly to the god by putting the image of the god, and this is the language that could be understood around the world.
Okay,
That's in the Tower of Babel.
Okay, that sounds awesome. That's amazing. I love it. It's beautiful. And there's a lot of superstition in there, and also the correct.
Well, it was
word.
the best science they had. I mean, you know, they were just tribes.
The
right?
correct word is divination. And most tribes and religions do communicate with God through divination. So
yes,
this idea here also
just because they were divining doesn't make it not science.
No, not at all.
Right.
And I never said divination is wrong or bad at all.
Right.
I mean, there's plenty.
Well,
We're doing it all day long.
The divination here was not based on like tarot card flipping or something like that. This divination was based on polarity. It was based on a mathematical basis of yin and yang, of 0 and 1. They learned all of that from the change of the star and the formation of the gods, and then the era of the gods, which looked perfect. It looked like an arranged geometry truth. And then they also didn't understand why it was breaking apart, which is comes across very clear from like how the Babylonians, they'd try to punish the gods by withholding the sacrifice, which is hilarious. Here's a frightening one: the mask. Look at how the god and the thunderbolts wrapping around to the god, and it just looks terrifying. It looks like it's easy to see it as a giant man. But you know, when you look at spirit, you see again the great man above and three gas giants below it, the triple godhead. There was one earlier, and it was obviously some kind of conjunction.
So let me continue as you show some of this real quick with my critical interpretation here. So these could also be, these patterns can be created very easily with skinned animals. You put skinned animals on a cylinder and you got a drum. Okay, you don't even have to drum the drum. You can put a didgeridoo on it and create a vibratory pattern on it. Okay. These are all very similar to vibratory patterns and animals. And I mean, I do understand symbology is one of the highest forms of communication, if not the highest. But it doesn't necessarily always imply everything having to do with the sky. But most of our languages did come and do come out of the torus and mimicking the sounds that we hear in nature. So I guess what I'm saying here is these patterns can be created, and just because they can be created with a voice, a tone, and a voice, yeah, you know, like they can be created. Therefore, that sound that they would tribally do around the fire, dancing around the fire as they get drunk on ecstasis. Ecstasy of just chanting. Chanting produces ecstasy and produces visions.
Yes.
So this could literally be the same thing that you're talking about, but on a more constructive interference. Harmonic like integration to maybe what they see in the stars. Also creating it on Earth, the pattern. Hey, we can create that. Look, and then
I know you're playing devil's advocate, but I have to say it sounds strained, and I'll tell you why. Because there's no origin. There's no origin for that, so there's no conservation of data. Where would they get the idea for doing it? You see, with this, you have a top down. You have toroids in the sky. You have synchrotron radiation in the sky. You have the motion of things that are clearly very powerful, and they're going to war with each other, or they're mating with each other. They're moving in ways that defy the explanation for the human. So the human sees it. Then they start to see the math, the 0, the 1, the 2, the 3, the 10,000 things. And they begin to put those things together. And then, sure, probably they did have chance and go into weird spaces and do all. And, you know, the Mayans and the Egyptians for sure did various forms of tantric meditations and then created very elaborate hieroglyphic systems. However, at the root of those hieroglyphic systems, when you look at the Mayan, when you look at the Egyptian, you always find the plasma glyphs. And the simpler versions of those plasmaglyphs show up in Chinese and in Kolbrin. And in Hebrew, obviously. Because the Hebrew, of course, has been shown to come from a Taurus.
Yeah, fire letters.
Yeah,
letters.
That work, and I forget the guy's name, but that work's been done like over 20 years ago.
Muru Foundation.
Yeah. And so, the simpler explanation is that mankind learned from something bigger than himself. And then they discovered, hey, I do have electricity in the body. I can meditate and move these things around. I do have an internal heaven and earth, these kinds of things. Yep. But what they're writing around here, it's not like they would have done a dance and bounced some sand around and then gotten the shape and then written it on the oracle bone to toss in the fire. They saw these things in the sky, and there are living remnants of that in the sumo tradition. All the clothing has to do with thunder and lightning. The word yokozuna, for example, has to do with thunder and lightning. The name of the rope that they wear has to do with thunder and lightning. The sumo stomp. When you look at the word shock, it means earthquake, and when you look at the word earthquake, it means thunderbird. Yeah, and that's the thing at Thunderbolts Project. They haven't done this kind of work. That they could, if they could, with enough people, they could out etymology everything. They could have it all lined out. Very fascinating here. This is the etymology for de. I was just talking about de last night. This is in Dao De Jing, like the very famous text. Everybody says te, but it's Dao De, and de is a phallic symbol, but it also has the I above. And when you look at B02347, you see the great I above is associated with the phallus. So we know that it is a great man above. But then when you go far enough back, you actually will see it's two planetoids, and then there's a plasma stream between the two. I'm not sure if I have that in this paper or not, but it is somewhere. And these energies connecting to each other, here, it might be here. No, this is Heartline.
So much more, dude. It's so much more interactive when you show your papers. This is great.
Well, you're welcome. You know, I'm just not big on showing off, right? Here we see the Heartline.
It's better. You don't even have to say it's your freaking papers. Just say there's this article here, whatever. I mean,
well, no,
we got it together.
I'm going to take credit.
Show it off. Might as well show it off.
So this is interesting. They in the heart mind, there's this, again, the horns. We started off the call talking about the horns, and then when you look, one of them is related to the mile. And so I looked at the background for mile. When you look, it's got the star above, and then it's got this pulse of energy going down the cosmic pole. Now that could be Venus down there. It could be some kind of energy moving. I don't know, but it means a unit of distance. Very strange. Very strange. So, and this is only one of a series of those kinds of etymology papers. So you can go deep into it. Fortunately, the Chinese just happened to be recording this, and this is still. That would be late megalithic, early transition period when these things were being recorded. And the whole point of the transition period is the time when the gods were disappearing and organized religion was being born in order to create the religious period. And that transition period, of course, was full of war, and it was full of issues. They still call, in China, they call what the Hindu calls samsara, the world of suffering. The Chinese call the world of the wheeling red dust, from the last time when both Venus and then later Mars came in and the dust came in, creating conditions for plague and death all over. And in China, they have the tradition of Houyi. Houyi shot down 9 out of the 10 gods, but Caesar, he had a festival where they would shoot 9 out of the 10 bulls, and they would let the 10th bull live. And the traditions go around to the same period. So I reckon Velikovsky is probably accurate. Just as to whether or not it was 400 BC or 700 BC, I really don't know. It just depends on if you trust the dating for the Dark Ages of Greece. It might be much more ancient than we think. I think Nick, I think it's Nick, might be Andy, but I think it's Nick, has been on about the Homeric tradition. And it's quite possible the Homeric tradition is really, really a lot more ancient than we think, because it was an oral tradition in the very beginning anyways. But these plasmaglyphs are pretty useful. They teach us that the god was, he was his weapon as well as himself. And he was also his body parts. He was all his little parts. The Elohim, so in the Bible, it says, let us go down and, how does it put it? Let us go down and topple it. Tower of Babel story. I want to get the wording correct. Genesis 11, 1-9. Okay, let's go back to the previous. Okay, here we go. Now the whole world had one language and a common speech. And I'm saying that's the plasmaglyphs. Come, let us make bricks, make it thoroughly, let us build ourselves a city, etc. But the Lord came down to see the city and tower building. The Lord said, is one people speaking, okay. Come, let us go down. Here's the important thing. Genesis 11:7. Come, let us go down and confuse their language. Who is the Lord talking to? Right? The Lord is clearly several beings combined into one being. And that's why the guy who's studying the Shangdi is having a hard time figuring out, because he doesn't have electroplasma cosmology. He's trying to figure out who are they talking to with their Shang oracle bones, because sometimes it seemed like the spirit world, sometimes it seemed like one god, and sometimes it seemed like many gods, the so-called Anunnaki. So it says here, come, let us go down and confuse their language. But above it's in Genesis 11:6, it says, the Lord said. So clearly the Lord is an us. And that's not the first time that's ever happened in Genesis. It's just one of those things that people conveniently skip over when they are talking about Christianity.
So did you say there, Ramon, the Lord said, let us go down and confuse their language, or let's go down and confuse their language?
It says, let us go down. Come, let us go down. The Lord said, and then he says something about languages. And then he says, come in 11:7, he says, come, let us go down and confuse their language so they would not understand each other. So who is he talking to? God doesn't need any help to do anything. So it's the entire body. The earth must have gotten too close and there was some earthquaking.
And that's when we come back to what we were talking about earlier on, whereby you have these periods of, for want of a better word, chaos.
Right. The end of the megalithic period was marked by some kind of earthquaking that broke the obelisk in Memphis, and it ended the building of Baalbek and left the pregnant stone there. And at the end of the Yongshan quarrying, where the biggest stone in the world was being carved, it ended that megalithic period. There was still megalithic carving, but nobody was able to lift them anymore. So something major happened.
And as Nick and Buddy have been discussing, it comes down to your connection with Sirius B and what was the other ones, Nick? You did mention them all. So we're all that connection system through those Birkeland current systems. If it's going bad, well, we'll call that. If it's going bad in those areas, eventually it will down to into our solar system too.
Look at that. Garrett's videos, as Io's plasma gun volcanoes. So it's the same stuff we've been talking about. It's fascinating. So what I'm looking up here, let's just look up Gem. One of these videos is going to have, I think maybe it's the constellations encode the secret. Let's see, that's part 3 of the discussion. He has a whole procession series. There's a questions and answers. So it's going to be one of those 9 videos, though. Let's just see if it's this one. Oh, this is a long one. I imagine he's somewhere in here. He's got the spiraling.
Mm-hmm.
This is a 54-minute video. That's not the image I was looking for. But this is basically what Buddy's talking about, these spiraling.
Yes.
And then let's see here. Skip to yeah, here he's talking about the direction and movement of the sun and the motion of the local interstellar cloud. And then direction towards the galactic center. So you see it's not orthogonal or elliptical. It's off center, which reminds me of like how nature is. Nature is, organic and irregular, but there's a hidden symmetry of the geometry to it. Let's see, he's talking about the filaments and the windings.
It'd be off center because at the end of it,
There we go.
it's probably working in a pair, Ramon.
It probably is, but also there's some function in the universe that encourages asymmetry. Look here. So this is the local chimney. And he covers the toroid. This is what Buddy's wanting to talk about, the toroid around the pinch, the hollowness. And then there are these filaments on the outside that are guiding the entire process. Let's see. Somewhere I feel like he had the whole system and how they move. I know it. I remember the image in my mind. And it had the whole thing and how they were moving around each other, the sun and the various bodies. This is a great video, though. This 54 minutes, and what a wealth.
Yeah, it looks amazing. I can't wait to watch it.
Which video is that one, Ramon?
It was kind of like his synopsis video of their in-depth discussion. They'd had. I'm gonna post that.
So that's one of Gareth's. See the pattern.
Yeah,
He did a series. on it. I think there were about 3 programs in all. They're very good programs as well.
Yeah, all in all, there are 9 total videos in the procession playlist. 3 of them are with Gem, and then he has a whole series of ones that have to do with Alfin and Ralph Jurgens, etc. And Donald Scott talking about these Birkeland currents and force-free aligned.
Force-free field aligned filament.
Right. And another thing that people need to realize is that all of these constellations look different than they used to, and some of them are moving. Some of the stars and galaxies that form points in the constellations are moving faster than other ones. So,
what's weird to me is if all of this supposedly happened, with everything changing and everything rearranging, how is it that the ancient structures that were built so long ago still line up with the current constellation of the equinoxes and everything else and all the other stars?
Well, some of them weren't built long ago, and some of them were built long ago, and you can only it just depends on the structure, right? So
even the ones that are ancient, they still line up.
Well, the ones that like Giza and Orion, they only line up 11,000 BC. They don't line up now.
Oh, okay. Okay. Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
I've got that in one of my papers. And then Caracal, the ones in Caracal, Belize, they line up to Orion like I think it was 3,000 or 4,000 years ago.
That makes more sense. I didn't know. I thought okay. See, that makes way more sense, because that was a huge hole in my theory about this whole thing. I'm like, well, why would they still line up if they're always changing? But I guess that was ancient alignment.
Like Great Serpent Mound. Great Serpent Mound is refers to the Venus motif, but what they did was they encoded the new equinoxes, and so then that whole system, that whole thing is no older than 4,000 years, but it's located on a crypto explosive site where they knew something had happened there, and they could see the cratering and everything, and it could be an astrobleem or it could be a thunderbolt. But so they put the Venus effigy there, but that's not proof necessarily that it was a Venus thunderbolt had happened there. It might have, but it doesn't look as big and robust as, say, the Eye of the Sahara. This is one of the Eye of the Sahara. The Reshat formation is the best of the counter rotational Birkeland strike that we have. That is a basically single pulse, and it's different than the Palladian thunderbolt. The Palladian thunderbolt, like we have here, is Jovian. So this was a direct arc connection, not an induced thunderbolt, because the Palladian thunderbolts are induced. So it's all very fascinating, because depending on the scale and the size and the source and everything, you just get completely different structures. That's what I think makes the PEM so fascinating and confusing.
So Ramon, how far out would some of those pyramids and that be now? Is there any sort of how far out are they to what they were originally, or we just know they're not where they were originally designed to be?
No, they're where they were designed to be, but the stars they represent are no longer in the same position. And
that's what I'm getting.
Some of them move faster than others. You have to look at the relative motions. There's star map programs online you can use, and you can step through. You can see some parts of the Orion belt are moving faster than other parts of the belt, but they're all moving. Yeah. Some of them are very close to where they were, and some of them are very far away, and that's how you can tell that it wasn't done at 5,000 years ago. It was done much earlier. Plus, we see the geological erosion, which is great. Why Robert Schoch, I'll always give him credit for that, no matter what he did to Osmanovich up there, the Bosnian pyramids, which was not right of him to do. Oh, here is a beautiful animation. Now, I don't know if he made this, but showing this movement is pretty neat. So we go back to the black hole. This reminds me of my work with the talking about the threefold the threefold science. The three body problem, where the two are going to approach each other and it's going to interfere, and there's going to be rapid acceleration. Another key point to Gareth, what he's talking about, it's actually from somebody else. I guess it's from Eric Lerner combined with Hannes Alphen. Is the stars will form a little off center, and then slowly rotate and get further and further away from the center until they're actually ejected out of the filament. According to, again, Hannes Alphen and Eric Lerner's work combined. It's mostly Eric Lerner, though.
So
that makes sense.
So they don't stay inside of the galactic arms? They do for a while, and then they get ejected. Fly out? Yeah. Do we have any examples? Do we have any examples in other systems like that with rogue systems?
There are some galaxies that appear to be outside of their galactic filaments. So when I say galactic, I mean super galactic electric circuit now. So the filaments are big enough for whole galaxies to rotate around.
I think they're calling them dark Saturns as well, aren't they? Once they go out the filament, they can just go dark.
Yeah, and then several of these, they will actually eject out of that filament, and then the galaxy is on its own.
That's if they do go out the filament. No. That's if they do. Because as we understand it, things don't pass through the filament, do they?
Yeah, I mean, again, all this is so new, really, who has the answers? But what makes some sense?
We have a lot of answers studying a lot of different circuits and how the circuits move. What aggregates towards the center of Markland convection, for example, how are the chemicals distributed along Markland convection? What the heavier ones are drawn towards the center of the circuit. That's why when I electrocute rocks, which it's not called electrocuting rocks, whatever it is, when I put the high voltage on the rocks, it pulls in other elements, and the heavier elements move towards the charge, like iron. It moves towards the electric circuit. So like it moves towards it, but it doesn't mean that it can become it, because then it destroys it. It doesn't necessarily destroy it. I don't know. There's so many different circuits, and what is at the center of all of them, right? Like these galactic central filaments, there's always space in between, and it's just empty space, right? They're just helical, double winding most of the time, quaternion sometimes systems and filaments.
So if you look at that picture you've got there on that video, Ramon, and what you were talking about earlier, where they get ejected along the filament every now and then. By that there, would those little dots that are outside be ejected? Would they be stars that have been ejected?
It looks like it.
Well,
yeah.
And if you're right, so let's say that would then give the indication that once they're ejected, they start to, on a motion, instead of being on a motion along the filament going out and around, they now get drawn back in.
They could. Oh yeah, I see that. They could.
See what I mean?
You can see what's happening in the Pleiades, the ancient kingfisher. It actually tells a story. It's got, I think it's the king, his wife, and the 7 daughters. And then if you read the Greek history behind the daughters, they have these certain various behaviours that seem to co-injunct with how these stars appear to be moving in relationship to each other. So I think when you there's a program, I think it's Hugh Evans. He explains the Pleiades system. I think he's a mate of Jim Wenninger's as well, and he explains that when this was observed, the actual dynamics of motion were put into the story. As they were with the Argos, the ship, because that's heading away from us in the description, and it shows you which planets on that filament are furthest away. It's quite amazing, really, and the ancients were aware of this. So it was almost as like just as we travelled on the oceans, we were travelling through space as well, and I think they kind of looked at us as being on board a little boat bobbing along through the ocean of space,
That's what a lot of ancient philosophers thought. Yeah, that's what we still think. There's really, ancient thinking is very similar in that way as far as the cosmologies go, and that was the only way of navigation.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is these ancient navigators were so good. They were actually observing the position. I think we can only see about 10 of the maybe 10 of the Pleiades with our naked eye, and they kind of twinkle on and off all the time. But there's actually about 100 of them there, and some are falling behind. Some are moving faster in clusters. They seem to be in a number of clusters. And then some seem to be dripping away from a cluster and moving off on their own. So it's a local system that is really worth observation, to get an idea how these clusters are moving along together along the filament. Quite amazing, really. And again, if we're right on the edge of the filament, are we liable to get flung off at any point in the near million years? I don't know.
Good point there, Good point there, Nick. Yeah. And then and then we're on our. We start the journey inwards.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think the theory is that we're actually heading into a more central point of the filament, and so we're speeding up. Things are speeding up again. You know, we're getting back into this yuga, which is that's a 26,000 year cycle, I think, or something like that. Anyway, I don't know the whole lot of it. I don't know, but
that's where we go out, isn't it? It's where we're sort of going through some form of a cloud at the same time. It's meant to be an area that's got a lot of, for want of a better word, dust in it.
Well, yeah, maybe it's what was observed in Sirius right in front of us. Maybe what happens to Sirius by the time we get the information, that's probably about 6 light years. So maybe they were watching what happens on Sirius. And then when we'll be running into the very same sort of electrical conditions, maybe in
the future.
Yeah, in a very, I don't know how far exactly. It'd be worthwhile working out, really.
Yeah, the Earth, the different planets. If you listen to, I don't know if it's Ice Age Farmer or Adapt 2030 or I forget which one of them. They were mapping out they were showing that each one of the planets has been reversing its poles, starting with Pluto and coming towards us closer and closer. And Ramon might know more about this. And each one of them changed direction of their the spin of something, their poles. If I'm right, I think Uranus. But it's moving towards us, and I heard every 6 months, or and then leading up into starting this last March into 2024, October 2024. Each planet's going to get affected differently. So, like the electrical charge does efficiently distribute itself. You know, like if we see something in, like you said, the Pleiades. Something significant, we should probably receive something significant instantaneously and then later too, because a lot of the stuff that we don't see happens instantaneously on a submolecular level, especially the bacterial level. Got microbiomes in different living creatures. There's studies that show that when there's a CME, a coronal mass ejection on the sun, instantaneously our gut bacteria reacts.
Well, I think that yes, you're going to see an informational, like instant reply, but there will be also a hysteresis. There will be a lag before the total total change totally takes over the system. So there'll be. I think that's what you said.
Yeah, similar to that. Yep.
I'm just looking through there's so many YouTube videos. I'm never able to catch up these days. It's interesting how people are producing more content now that everything's becoming decentralized, where the system hates the decentralization, even though it created the decentralization, which is hilarious. Like they created it and then they're like, oh wait, we can't contain it, because of course it's all spiraling out and they're interested in so many things and there's just so much happening that there's no way for any one person to keep up with it. As we talk, I think of several papers that I need to write. For example, I need to go back and show that Ben Davidson was wrong about us going through some kind of electric sheet and it causing, an imminent catastrophe. But he's not necessarily wrong that we probably are coming out from behind a dust cloud. But showing that is a direct correlation to we're about to have micronova or something like that is not the data is just not there. He's making conjecture. If he would make it if he would make it a hypothesis, I wouldn't have as much problem. But it's like a fear mongering conjecture. And I have a serious problem with that kind of approach to his version of science.
Yeah, he definitely takes it a little fear mongering.
Yeah, it scares him.
No fear. He says no fear.
Yeah,
eyes open. On every episode, it's like the only way to make someone afraid is to tell them constantly, "Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid.
Don't be afraid.
Oh, have no fear." But God does that. God does that too. I mean, God does that too. Think about it. It's the number one commandment in the Bible is fear not. So it does build up courage in a way. But I don't know. Whatever. Everybody has their own way, right?
Well, awareness is important. And I do want people to be aware, but they need to understand that the reason why the Earth flipped over last time is we went from being around Jupiter to being around the sun. And that changed our electric field relationship. And as soon as that happens, then the Earth had every reason to flip over.
Mm-hmm.
But there's no proof that it's about to flip over again, or there's going to be a micronova. It just isn't there. He wants it to be there. Maybe he wants, I don't know, maybe he wants a catastrophe. Maybe he's just grifting. I don't know. I can't tell. I don't know his motivations. I just know that I'm displeased with the way it misleads the community. Not happy about that.
You see, the don't fear is you don't need to fear because it will be quick and swift.
Yeah, that's true. Uh-oh, here we go. Here's a video he did. Solar system shift. Which planet falls next?
No, that's what I was talking about. That's what I was talking about. There's this. The solar system is shifting, and each planet is changing. That's what I was just talking about.
Yeah, it's changing, but they're not flaring. I don't know where. Sometimes they flare, but they're not flaring in a way that is like a predictable. Like we're moving through a current sheet. It's not like that.
The poles are shifting on each planet, and it's coming closer towards Earth. And we have supposed that it's going to happen on Earth if it's happening on the other planet. That
I believe. That I do believe, but I don't think you can predict when it's going to happen.
But I'm saying they're already showing that it's happened on other planets that are in our solar system. If that's true, we could be next, and that's what he's talking about.
Could.
Is that going to happen? And is there? And should we be preparing?
Well, of course, we should always be preparing, but the best preparation is for us to move to a spacer society. Otherwise, there is no really preparation. The government's got their giant underground tunnel cities, and they're only going to save the people they think are worthy of saving. And that ain't you and me, which means
there's been mass preparations time and time again. We've gone under the earth time and time again. The Yuga cycle's happening. It's about to get rough and dirty on the surface, and we know that we need to go underground. And even the Bible calls for this. This is apocalyptic. We know that the people who are going to try to hide underground are what they call the guilty people, because they're the ones that are afraid of death. Death, where's your sting? Death is already conquered for those who have no fear of death. So the people who are going to be trying to survive and trying to get their bodies uploaded digitally and all sorts of this other stuff are going to be the people that want to stay here forever in this place, that are afraid of death and never conquered the fear of death while they were here on Earth. So there's everything really comes down to the fear of death. A lot of religions and a lot of everything. There's it all comes down to conquering death, right? Conquering the fear of death. That's
I think your attitude to life's all about that, really. It's about, not researching yourself because you're scared of an inevitable thing. That's about the crux of it.
Yeah, some people are afraid of it, but some people can get beyond it, and that's why a lot of religions start to give off the impression of eternal life or to prove eternal life, because people are afraid of dying and they want their loved ones to live forever. Mourning leads to eternality, leads to trying to preserve people's memory and their legacy, and that leads to constructing Herculean characters that become myths and legends because their legend becomes too big for who they really were. We can't tell if they're true stories or semi-true or fake or true. You know, that's kind of what I was saying.
You were on about the religions and how they went to the fear of death.
Yeah. That's the root of all religions. A lot. Well, that's what they say. The root of the root of, what is it? Something is the fear
The root
of God.
of all evil is the root of all evil is the love of money, is what has been said. But really, the root of evil is ignorance, because it leads to all the other things: ignorant actions, ignorant thoughts, ignorant behaviors. You can't have what Buddha called right thinking, right behavior if you are running around not dealing with your own dukkha. It's funny, the word dukkha means ignorance and it means suffering at the same time.
I would say selfishness, the root of all.
Well, but why is a person selfish? Because they're ignorant. They're ignorant of anything beyond themselves. That's why the word dukkha means suffering and ignorance at the same time.
But I was saying the beginning of the beginning of wisdom is fear of the Lord. Fear of the Lord is the root of fear of the Lord is fear of dying, fear of, oh my gosh, something's going to happen to me, fear of retribution for your actions.
And an ignorant person doesn't understand that they're mortal. And it's funny, the word that means even like profound and willful ignorance is niscience, almost as in negative science. Very interesting. Niscience. Oh, right inside uploaded something else. Man, there's a lot of people have uploaded. Holy moly. I got like a whole weekend of viewing here. My goodness. Ancient architects. Everybody's busy. Everybody's doing something. Everybody's trying to create. All the good doers are trying to create and trying to bring solutions. Well, I just saw something about Ace and Elite. Oh, this is a basketball video.
Anyway,
I totally had a different thought on that.
Anyway, gent, it's getting a bit early in the morning here, and I'll catch you later.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to have to do something now. Cheers, Andy.
No,
see you later, chaps. We'll catch you soon.
It's been a 3-hour show. Stop record.
The geometric view is a love is watching product. Love is watching being. Thank you for doing that. Keep your eyeballs out. Pay attention. There's a lot going down this year. Be vigilant. Be mindful. Be insightful. Be loving. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being kind. Share the love. Spread the love. Become the love. Amen.
grittiest of life, I'm there. I'm there. Through the grimiest and the grittiest of life, I'm there. Through the grimiest and the grittiest of life, I'm there. Oh no. Through the grimiest and the grittiest of life, I'm there.